9 a.m. I am happy you are all here for our CoC Board Directors meeting. I'm Kathleen Beckman, the chair. Wanted to let you know there's coffee and water and chocolate chip cookie bars over there if you'd like some. Want to thank Kevin Marone and Bowley Centers for allowing us to meet here today. And thank you all for being here to help us reach quorum to do this important work. I know that we've all been through incredible trauma and have known people who have been through trauma and are going through it, and the hurricanes and other personal things. And I sympathize with you and appreciate the commitment to this work. And I know everyone has a story. With that said, also, I'll make an announcement today. I mean, you're all aware that the former HLA CEO, Daisy Correa, submitted a letter of resignation on September 27th, and it was effective yesterday. And so we wish her well in her next chapter. And serving as the HLA interim CEO is Nick Constantino, who's here at the end here. Nick, want to say hello?
Hey, everybody. I know I've met some of you, but I haven't met all of you yet. This is Nick Constantino. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We are in the middle or getting ready for a search. We're going to do it differently this time. We're considering, we're consulting with the executive committee of the CoC on Monday. I have recommendations with my executive background on how to do this better, because I've been on the board for 4 years and this is our fourth CEO. There's a problem. So it's a problem with process. We're going to figure it out and we're going to do it differently. We want a lot of feedback from everybody. Everybody's going to be involved in the process because we clearly have an issue. In my experience, that's just my feedback. So there'll be updates soon on the task force continuation. I know everybody's been through a lot. There's a lot of stories in this room. I have one of them too. I lost a car and I had 6 inches of water in my house. So all of us have those kind of stories, but that's going to pick up again. Are there any updates from any of the county or law enforcement folks, how things are going? Any updates on encampments or any issues or any problems right now?
Well, we have that on the task force on the agenda.
Okay.
Right. So we'll do that kind of then.
I apologize. I haven't looked at the agenda.
No, that's okay. It's just that
I'm speaking off my head right now.
Nope, you're all good. But Anne Marie's, there's some people that might have to leave early that we've got to make sure we get through what we need to do. But thank you, Mick.
But in the meantime, is there anything you need to ask me real quick? Feedback, questions, sidebars are fine too. We're good? All right, thank you.
Okay. All right. HLA, can you do the roll call, please, for attendance?
Beckman,
Here, present.
Neil Burfield, Michael Freegian, School Board Member Caprice Edmond is virtual. President Janine Evoli, Member Deborah Sanders. You mentioned she could not make it. Commissioner Renee Flowers, Ariana Forsythe, Lieutenant Zach Cage, Neil Henry, Commissioner Donna Holt, Michael Gelazo,
Here.
Teresa Jones,
Here.
Watson Capper, John Kang, April Watt,
Present.
Councilmember Michael Menino, Kevin Moreau,
Here.
Esther Matthews,
Here.
Elise Minkoff is online. Sarah Molo,
David Moran on behalf of Mr. Muller.
Picard,
Here.
Ross Silver,
Present.
Gary Small,
Present.
Danielle Thomas, and Anne Marie Winter here.
We have quorum, in-person quorum, there I work. There's no-
We have 13 present in person. We need 14 for quorum.
We need one more for quorum.
I'm sorry. Voting members, we have 12. So we need 2 more.
Mr. Moran, will be, your membership, for Sarah Mola will be addressed in, January, once we have that application completed. We appreciate you being here, by the way.
Anyone else who said they were gonna be here, they were expecting?
I didn't hear you, Michael. I'm sorry.
I said, is there anyone else that said they're gonna be here who were expecting?
Like somebody's coming in.
Daniel,
just hello, it's Danielle.
Zero short form, chair.
And Janine's coming right now. Then we will have quorum in just a second.
Okay.
I like having one of those.
Hopefully this will be the last meeting that we struggle with this. We can just cross this off our list.
Can I ask a clarifying question on the roll call? So I thought Elise was taking Nick's seat. Is that correct or no? I thought Neil's seat.
That is correct, except that you all put me as chair of the Funders Council, and that knocked me out of representing the Housing Authority. Sounds a bit antiquated, but there you have it.
Okay, got it. Okay,
And we did double check that with Charlie Burtis. the
Okay.
attorney.
perfect. Thank you.
And I believe has been a previous instance where both Cliff Smith and Amy Foster served for the city, and it was because Cliff Smith was the chair of the Funders Council.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, welcome. I'm glad you're all here.
Me too.
We have a quorum.
I was gonna walk out of
Come on, hang in there. All right. So we are on agenda item 2, the consent agenda. I hope you've all reviewed the board attendance. If there are any changes that need to be made to your attendance, that's indicated, or the minutes. And that's from September 6th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
related to the attendance, is it appropriate, since we do have a motion and a second now to discuss it? It's concerning to me that, and I know we're gonna take up the issues of how we will meet quorum moving forward. But it should, in my opinion, be noted that our immediate past chair has not been to one of our meetings in person. That's concerning to me. I know that he contains institutional knowledge and historical knowledge as well. And I think that that's those types of that the organization has been drained of institutional knowledge. It's been evident to me with the issues of trying to gain quorum, as well as with the exodus of the most recent executive director, the staff members who have left. It's impacting this organization. So my suggestion would be to reach out to our immediate past president chair and ask that he would make every effort to be here at the table or to gauge his continued interest in serving. Thank you.
I'd like to comment on that. Is, we're talking about Sean, right?
Yeah.
So I will say that people who would do things virtually and participate virtually, Sean has always been one of those. And I think by creating the option where we can actually have the sort of, I look at you, April, when I say the hybrid option, I think Sean's a good participant. I would love for him to be in person, but Sean's someone who will participate virtually. Just saying that in his defense.
I will also say in Sean's defense, although I agree 100% with every word that just came out of your mouth, Teresa. But what I will also say is two things. One, that he has been, I'm going to call it pretty active with executive committee. Do you disagree, Kathleen?
I think, this part of the agenda is not about talking about
One person.
one person or anything. I would just say that it's a lot to transition between different leaders, 4 leaders in 4 years. And to have people like you, like Teresa, others, Sam, that have been here for far longer than I have, to help in that transition of bringing people up to speed. And we need everyone 100%, as much as they can, engaged to make that work. And I think that it's an area that we can do better. And I'm hoping with the virtual, it will, but voices need to be heard, not just sprinkled in, but consistently.
I agree.
And just to conclude, this was not solely about, my comments weren't solely about Sean. It's the organization is not just the board, it's also the HLA staff. And there has been a brain drain, if you will, with the lead organization that leads this continuum of care. Staff members up and down the roster, most notably the CEO, the COO, et cetera. And I don't know if there is an opportunity to get some consulting from these folks. I think about folks like Susan Finlaw de Solis, Avery Sliker. Those are the hierarchy of folks, the Dominique Randall even, of people who have left the organization. And with that drain, I would imagine any incoming CEO has struggled to try and build the historical picture of what's the purpose of this organization. So I will conclude my comments with that. I just wanted to bring focus before we get in later into the agenda discussing forum. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I think one further comment that I would make too is, hopefully you read the minutes, but part of the minutes from that September meeting was about the importance and the expectation, not requirement, but expectation that CoC board members participate in a committee. And that is not happening as it should. And so as we get down to committee reports, you'll see that there's some struggling. And, I know we've had task force and we've had COVID and other challenges, but that is part of a robust, fully engaged organization that moves things positively forward. It takes everyone. And again, believe me, I understand people in social services are stretched to the max, but it is part of how we would best operate.
As someone that did read the minutes and looked at the attendance for all of those committees, all of the committees are struggling with quorum. And it's a sad commentary.
With that said, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes with the attendance? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on to quorum requirements. So this has been talked about numerous times, and you have the proposed amendment to our quorum requirements. Do I have any commentary on this? Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Discussion, Sam?
Just two things that I thought might be fruitful to add. One is on the membership meetings. That's a big body and it's very flexible in some ways. So I would recommend a 25% quorum for CoC membership meetings.
Okay.
And it looks to me like in the proposed amendment, Zoom participation may qualify towards attendance. It doesn't explicitly say and quorum, but it should. I think that's the point of this.
Okay. Okay, and that's with their camera on and all that business. Okay.
So, Sam,
So I would move those two amendments.
a clarification of your
Yeah, please.
amendment to the motion. So you're suggesting that if they are on Zoom, the camera must be on, I assume at all times, and that they will then also be allowed to be counted towards the in-person quorum?
Well, the quorum would no longer be in-person
In-person
quorum,
only.
it would just be quorum.
Right.
And the quorum would include those who are on camera, on Zoom.
Okay,
So it's switching to a hybrid. So quorum is online as well as in person.
the only comment I would make, Madam Chair, is I think you're gonna see an increase in those that will be attending virtual,
I agree.
so that we are prepared for that.
Yeah, I wondered about the way it was written here. I think I made this point previously, which is that, you know, having the hybrid is what I am opposed to. What I am in favor of is either all Zoom or all in person. I think it is exceptionally difficult, and I'm assuming all of us are doing this on a regular basis, to have productive, effective meetings when they are both, when they are, you know, when it's both. People are on Zoom and in the room, that it's hard to get a word in edgewise. So I just want to say that I think it's going to move us, but I think it's going to also going to reduce perhaps or not increase what we're expecting, which is active, you know, participation. I think it's hard to do when we have both of them going on. So nonetheless, I would accept your friendly amendments to the motion.
Kevin.
I was just gonna say in comment to that, the Joint Provider Funders Council just had this conversation at the last meeting as well, and what that decision is that we would have, I don't have the minutes here actually, but that we were gonna make three of the meetings
Zoom,
all Zoom only, and then one in person.
Michael?
Yeah, and again, I feel like we've talked about this way too much over the last like 5 years, but on other boards that I'm on where we do it, people are encouraged. I think everyone understands how important it is to participate. And I get it, because when you're on Zoom, there's this propensity to multitask. But if we encourage participation and people understand that their voices need to be heard, then the people who need to speak. I mean, that's what I would have said. That's what I said in Sean's defense. When we were virtual, I participated regularly, even when we were hybrid. So I just think that we got to encourage it. And I don't disagree with what we did at Providers Funders, you know, because maybe more people participate if everyone's all Zoom. But it's a contingent on us to engage people and not discourage. And I just, because I agree, I'm not actually fundamentally agree with you, April. You know, but I also think that we need form, we need to be able to vote, and then we need to really encourage people online to speak up. I mean, I think that's on us to go to push for them, so.
I concur with April. I really don't care for hybrid meetings, but I think it's a challenge that needs to be addressed in terms of making sure that we're recognizing the folks that are virtual too. There's a real challenge to that. When you are in the virtual world, not in the room, raising your hand sometimes gets ignored. I just think somebody's going to have to be responsible for not only recognizing when someone is trying to chime in and be recognizing that part of the conversation, but also monitoring the chat room or disabling the chat. I mean, a lot of stuff goes into chat rooms that is vital information to be known by the folks that are in the real world, so to speak. So there's a real challenge to that. And I don't know if staff would be tasked with monitoring what's being said, or who, you know, making sure the chair knows that Teresa's got her hand up and he wants to speak. Now, I don't know how it's just a challenge.
So, I won't vote in support of this. I'm just putting it out there. I think that when these challenges take place, it's an opportunity for us to re-engage or disengage from people who are just done with meetings and engage with some new voices, some freshness, some voices that maybe haven't been brought to the table. I know from experience, when you do this, people are not engaged. I'm one of them. If you give me the opportunity to do it via Zoom, I have 10 other things that I'm doing, of which I will be doing, because they are equally as important in that space. So if I'm not here, you don't get my full attention. If I'm here, I'm fully engaged. So I wouldn't be voting in support.
So I agree with everything that's been said, pro and against. I think because you've been discussing this for 5 years, we need to do something. We need to do something differently.
Yep.
And so I think this is a good option to do something differently, and give people the opportunity and see how it goes. And if this passes, we will have a forum to make changes down the road. But to continue to struggle in the way that we have, I don't think is productive, and it takes up a lot of time in every meeting that I have had the opportunity to participate in this year. And so I will be voting in favor of this with the friendly amendment that Teresa has proposed.
Zach, did you have anything?
No, Anne Marie said everything.
Let's move it.
Madam Chair, I know you don't have a vote or a voice. I just have a comment suggestion. One thing that some organizations are doing right now because of this struggle, which is very real, is that, and it's extra administrative work, but tracking the number of times somebody participates virtually and in person. And peer pressure has a unique way of making people come to their own conclusions. People don't have to tell them about involvement sometimes. It's just an idea. Oh, you do that?
Yeah, it's on the attendance if it's virtual or.
Then again, I don't have a voice, and I'm sorry I raised.
So we haven't,
It's fine. Thank you.
so we haven't established an expectation around there. So in other words, you're allowed 1 or 2 virtual meetings a year. That would take that to a different level of accountability. Just tracking it doesn't mean anything if there's no parameters around it.
Yes, that's what I meant by that too, by the way.
Madam Chair, just a point of clarification on the motion. It mentions specifically the board and the, with the amendment to the general membership meetings. Will this also apply to the subcommittees? And I asked that question because of the ongoing challenges that I mentioned earlier of reaching quorum with the subcommittees. I mean, that's the biggest part of my jaw about DEI.
Yeah, we have under that current requirement, it says committees from the charter, page 13. Committees may determine if they would like in-person or Zoom for attendance and voting purposes.
Okay, so it's up to
So
the
it's up to the
committee.
committees.
All right, thank you for that clarification.
All right.
Call for the question.
Any further discussion? Okay, Victoria, do you want to read the amended motion? Or do you want me to try to formulate it?
Sure, that's okay. So the proposed amendment, Zoom participation may qualify towards attendance and quorum during both board and CoC membership meetings if the member has their camera on and actively participates in the meeting through verbal or written communication, participation in polls, voting, etc. If a member is participating virtually and cannot turn their camera on due to technical difficulties, they must communicate this to CoC leadership and or HLA staff and actively participate in the meeting through verbal or written communication, participation in polls, voting, etc.
There was an additional amendment related to 25%.
I was going to ask about that. I wasn't 100% sure if that was part of it. Okay, perfect. And then also the quorum for CoC membership meetings would be reduced to 25%.
Great. Okay, thank you for putting that in that format, for verbalizing it for us. So do I have a motion to accept that amended proposed amendment for the change in the form? Second.
Okay, just to add a clarification, I made the motion initially. I accepted the amendment minutes ago. I think Michael was the second. So
Okay,
Michael needs to accept the amendment.
with all those. Okay. All right, all those in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you. So that'll be effective the next meeting. Will be hybrid. And then, based on in-person attendance, we'll kind of make decisions about location requirements based on how people are showing up. Okay. The next agenda item is the proposed meeting dates, and we'll need some action on this. I did notice the CoC membership meeting schedule. You have one is Valentine's Day and one is Veterans Day, which I think may have to be changed. Minimally Veterans Day. It should not be on Tuesday, November 11th for 2025. But pardon me?
No. Is it Veterans Day on Monday? No, am I wrong about that? On the 11th? My apologies.
So, if we want to provide feedback about, this is an action item. Oh, it's not,
Monday-
it's not.
Monday is the 11th. Yeah, it's just got the wrong date. It's
So
just
for
got the wrong-
2025, I looked it up. It's a holiday. It's a Tuesday, 25, yeah. So,
So Madam Chair, you're looking for a motion on these proposed dates that for the Board of Directors meetings and all the other meetings that are referencerships and the info sessions, is that correct? Or you want to take them separately?
well, did you want an action on this right now? Because you don't have action on the agenda. Do we need to vote on this, or do we want do you want feedback?
If the committee, but if the board would like to vote on it, a vote is always appreciated because it makes sure that things are enshrined. But if feedback is preferred, that's okay too. It doesn't need to be an action.
It does say that.
Okay,
So, Madam Chair, one question I have related to the Board of Directors meeting schedule is specifically related to the one for July 4th replacement. It's recommending rescheduling to Friday, June 6th due to the holiday. And the question I have or the actual suggestion I have is that rather than move it forward by a month, since we were met May 2nd, I would suggest that we move the date later in July. So it sort of keeps with our every other month pattern instead of, back to back in June, May and June. So I was just curious why staff was recommending Friday, June 6th, as opposed to another date in July.
I'm happy to answer that. Historically, July has been a very, very hard month to achieve quorum. And that is true pretty much the whole month through. So during the last July board meeting, which was rescheduled because we could not achieve quorum, not just HLA staff, it was discussed with some CoC leadership. I don't remember exactly who. I'm sure Chair Beckman, this was discussed with you as well, that we would try our best to avoid July meetings in future to ensure quorum. And we moved the meeting to June so that we could try and get the point in time report ready for June to be presented then, so that it was ready a little bit earlier.
Given the fact that we've just changed the quorum requirements and went to hybrid meetings, I would suggest that we consider placing the July 4th meeting sometime in July. It's just a suggestion.
any further discussion? All right. Do I have a motion on how you want that to proceed with those suggested dates for the Board of Directors meeting schedule? Be hybrid.
I would suggest that I'm gonna make a motion that we move the July 4th meeting to later, such as what's being recommended for the January meeting. Actually, it's 7 days later. So I'm not certain, 7 days, 7 and 4 would be 11, July 11th. I don't know if that's a work day or not.
Okay.
That would be my motion.
I'll second that motion.
Motion in a second. Any further discussion? All
Well,
those
on that one, I will not be able to attend.
on the 11th?
Yes, I wouldn't be able to attend on the 4th either. So I probably was one of the ones that Victoria is referencing was a part of a discussion for the July meeting. I could do later in the month, but I just want to put it on the record that I would not be able to be in attendance, Zoom or otherwise.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Fantastic. Thank you. Now we have the membership meeting.
What did we just vote on? The change to the June meeting or to the entire schedule?
I thought it was the board of directors.
Entire schedule or to the June meeting?
The entire schedule.
Entire schedule with the change. Okay.
With the change to July 11th for the July meeting.
All right. Well, I think we should make, I don't know how Robert's rules to go back, but so we approve Tuesday, November 11th, Veterans Day of 2025?
No.
I think our motion was just for the board of directors.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Okay, good. Now we'll go on to the CoC membership meeting and the information schedule. So we have Valentine's Day and Veterans Day that I think are a little problematic.
So the Valentine's Day is actually a Friday. I think you might have selected Fridays instead of Tuesdays. I apologize. It looks like we have Fridays up here. So actually the second Tuesday in February is February 11th.
Okay, so just change that date to.
I apologize for that. And then in May, the second Tuesday is indeed May 13th. So it might have just been that one. And then in August, it is August 12th. So that is correct. And then November is November 11th. Yeah, so it's just that one Friday.
But again, Veterans Day is the
Yes.
11th.
So the Friday, or not Friday, now I'm saying Friday. The Tuesday before that is November 4th. The Tuesday after that is November 18th. I will note that as of right now, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee does meet on the third Tuesday of the month. These are not overlapping meetings, but just in case anybody wants to take into account that the 18th, if that was selected for the CoC membership meeting, there would also be a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee meeting earlier that morning.
I'd move these meeting dates with November 4th instead of November 11th. For that membership.
And February 4th.
And February 11th. So
February
it's
11th.
Tuesday, February 11th, Tuesday, May 13th, Tuesday, August 12th, and Tuesday, November 4th. Is that how you want it to read?
Yeah. That's right.
Just a note that I'm looking at November 4th, 2025, and my calendar's noted that it's an election day.
Yeah.
So,
That is a really good point, Mr. Rivas. That is a very good point.
so I would, so I'm not certain who made the motion. I would propose a substitute motion of changing the date to November 18th. It's an evening meeting anyways. It's been in the past, I believe it's hybrid. And it's not like where you gotta, well, we only need 25% now, if my memory serves me correct. So I would suggest change it to November 18th for that meeting.
I was the second, so I accept your friendly amendment.
Yeah, I'll accept that as well.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to the amendment. So the dates are Tuesday, February 11th, Tuesday, May 13th, Tuesday, August 12th, and
Say November 18th.
Tuesday, November 18th. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. All right, our information schedule session.
Move approval.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Second,
Second.
and any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Just a quick note, so for I'm in 2026 already. Forget it. Sorry. Yeah, sorry, we're done.
Okay, all good. All right, so that motion has carried. Thank you. So we've got our schedules set for 2025. Fantastic. All right, our next agenda item is agenda item 5, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee, and some possible action with Dr. Susie Patterson and Tracy.
Is Susan even?
She is.
I still went to Habitat for Humanity. It's on my calendar, so I'm late, sorry.
We're glad you're here.
Okay, so the reason we wanted to bring this action item to the board is because we haven't been able to make quorum really in any consistent kind of way for the DEI committee going on a few years now. So it hasn't even been this year. This has been for a really long time. And I took up the chairship because I very much believe in this work, but it was because we were also having issues. Can we find someone to be the chair? Would somebody be willing to take this on? Even in just being the chair for this committee, it's been hard to get people to show up in any kind of consistent way. I know that recent legislation has affected maybe people not knowing if they can be involved, which they can be because the Stop Woke Act does not affect nonprofit organizations. But I mean, my guess is maybe there's still some fear there around what people can and can't do. But we had a discussion. We did not make quorum at the last meeting. And Teresa brought up that, you know, this has been a persistent problem. What would it look like to just disband this committee? Because right now we keep showing up. People aren't showing up for quorum. Even if people said, and I know Megan thought last time that people were going to show up and make quorum, and then people still didn't show up for the meeting. So in the spirit of what's in our best interest as people who are showing up, we're suggesting that we disband this committee right now.
And Madam Chair, and I specifically suggest that we do disband the committee. We've had discussions, took up quite a bit of the last meeting related to the same issue, the same committee. Susie failed to mention that she did a study, a disparity study, I believe 4 or 5 years ago, that specifically showed disparity in our homeless provision of services, both anecdotal as well as based on our data. We know from our point in time count that people of color, specifically African Americans, are the largest percentage of homeless in our county. These 2 last hurricanes, as we all know, devastated homes of individuals who were not only wealthy, but those that were really struggling to begin with. I think of folks down in the Bartlett Park area of St. Pete, which is very close to where we know a lot of homeless individuals already live. And some of them have been even shown on the news as living in horrid conditions now that the hurricane has come through. So our problem is just growth. And I also know that some of the providers have referenced the fact that they have contracts with the state that specifically prohibit them from participating or referencing diversity, equity, and inclusion. I understand that the strings that come with, you know, if your funder says you can't deal with that, and that's partly really tied to politics. I know that there are challenges on how you navigate that. But as a lifelong advocate for equal opportunity, civil rights, et cetera, I am frustrated by the fact that we as an organization are not able to deal with this. And I'm saying it nicely. So I do recommend, and I'm going to make a motion, and let me back up. We discussed folding it in the advocacy committee. But the advocacy committee, if you read the minutes, you just got a chair and I believe a vice chair and have done nothing. So I think the minutes are from June or something like that. That's 5 months ago. So there's been no real activity there either. If you look at the number of individuals that are part of that committee, I believe it's about, and I won't pull it out, but I think it's 3 or 4 people. I think that's just treading water too. So I'm recommending that we disband it. And I don't know if we're going to lose points with HUD for not having a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, because I think that's partially why we put it in place to say we're dealing with this. The same reason why we put the Lived Experience Committee in place, because HUD encourages that. I think that's something that the organization will have to deal with and take a ding on your application for funding. But I think we're just, it's a facade that we have a committee that's not functioning. So I make a motion that we disband.
I second the motion just to move it forward for discussion.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Discussion. It's a significant move. I think as we begin to discuss does the HLA have clarity on points awarded or expectations from HUD on having DEI as a focus of the work we do?
I can speak to that. So not on having DEI per se, but definitely attending to racial inequities. So that is something that does have to move forward and you know, getting creative with, I know that the DSP committee discusses disparities often, making sure that it's not just about having a committee show up, but what's actually being done about it. Right? So that is ultimately what would give the points, not just saying, hey, we have a committee. Right.
Exactly.
But here's the participation, here's the outcomes. We can show through data that we are moving forward, or we are working with it and coming up with other things to test to see what happens. So that's so having the initials, the acronym, the window dressing does not get the points.
So I think we need to demonstrate to HUD that we are still doing that work. And I think, again, this goes back to, you know, at the opening, when we talked about the minutes of the last meeting, that there are expectations that each one of us serves on a committee. And we need people on these different committees to make that work go forward. And part of what the charter says is committees are the action planning components of the system. In these bodies, strategies are developed, deepened, and expanded into timed work plans. These groups may also be directly responsible for specific strategies or exploring options to solve particular concerns. Committees make recommendations to the CoC board for approval. And that was, there's like this proposed flow chart that we've talked about, and I have it today when we talk about the advocacy committee, that a DEI committee or the systems committee, would notice things and research them deeply and bring proposed solutions or things to advocate for throughout the county. And then the advocacy committee takes a look at that, takes it to the executive board. The executive board is like, okay, this looks good. They bring it back to us, all of us. You vote on it and give walking papers to the advocacy committee to go out there and advocate those changes. Hopefully with that committee that's proposed things right beside all the members of the advocacy committee to go forward and use certain tools in our toolbox, namely the PIT count and data systems and performance and the Pinellas County Housing Compact and all those things that can be tools as we go out to advocate for different funders and municipalities. So I think, that's kind of the proposed flow and how committees can best operate the way I understand it. If I'm missing something or you want to add to that, feel free.
Kevin first.
Yeah, Kevin first, Kevin.
I don't know. I was just gonna say, I wonder if, since it starts with data that we recognize these disparities, could it be an extended, specific, clear agenda item on, Sam, Data System Performance Committee, where, the work is going to look at that and then recommendations from there to advocacy.
See, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping someone here, because I'm almost going to say something similar, but maybe adding on to what Kevin said. This discussion is another discussion that we've had too many times, and I'm sorry for people who say that, we can or can't. What we've brought to this board over the last, I'm going to say 2 or 3 years, is that it's tricky running a nonprofit organization in the state of Florida And it's not a question of whether legally the Woke Act or Stop Woke Act stops us from putting people on committees or not. It's everything else that we do as individual organizations that could be on the table because we participate in different things that is not necessarily on the agenda in Tallahassee. And I'll just say that broadly. I think and then the other part of the discussion, and you're right, Teresa, is the advocacy committee, as we've tried to really launch it over several years, is really where, and this kind of comes back to you, Nick, is where I believe that we really need to embolden whoever our new leader of the HLA is to do advocacy. That's why we have an HLA, is to be the advocate for this board. So those are two different things. If we create a system disparities committee, that solves our problem with HUD, and I'll be glad to serve on it. I mean, let's get to what we need to get for HUD, but not have to be subject to, you know, I have a workforce program that we're going to need support from the governor's office on. And so we have to weigh things out. And it's not something so nonchalant for us who lead organizations that, well, I guess you can't do it. We have other things that we do other than just serve on this board. And it's not meant to be disrespectful to the people who've been pushing hard to make sure that this committee does something. It puts us in a very tough situation. So I would support what Kevin's sort of suggesting, I think, is if we either extend something or create a committee that's specific to studying system disparities, that's not going to draw ire from Tallahassee. We don't have to worry about the political part of that, and then disband the committee as a DEI committee so we can actually get to what we need to get to. Because what you said, Teresa, is absolutely right. We all live here, and we see what has happened in the last month. And we see, my God, Esther, we shut down 16th Street because you were able to coordinate with the state representative and people from Miami to distribute resources. We shut down 16th Street. This is a huge need. We need to study it, but let's do it in a way that doesn't bring the political crap to the table. That's all. I don't know, I'm getting all fired up.
Well, you know what? I appreciate the fire because
I do too, man.
It's
Amen, brother.
about the people, you know, and it's not just the numbers we see in our data. It's not just, you know, the politics at hand today. It's about the people, the Black folks that are walking the streets of the South Side, that we're walking the streets out here, not just walking distance out here at Central Plaza. And what are we doing as an organization to get them off our streets? And our problem just has gotten even bigger because a lot of the affordable housing has been destroyed. The mobile homes have been destroyed. So this is a huge problem. And, you know, we can sit in our nice meetings, et cetera, but there's people out here and walking up and down this 31st Street that are homeless and have been chronically homeless for years. And our data shows that we are not doing enough to make sure that we are equally distributing the programs and resources to those that need it most.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So we can't see in the minutes, right, who is on this committee and therefore who isn't showing up, back to a comment that was made earlier about peer pressure. So I have no idea, right, who that is. Regardless, the first comment that I would have is, you know, when I look at the members who are showing up, there were 3 in attendance and 1 that attended remotely. I often wonder about how many people we need to have on a committee in order to be effective. In other words, is it really true that 4 people can't do what needs to be done? Why is the membership so high that we can't achieve quorum? I don't know. Why don't we make membership 4 people, and so therefore, or membership is 5 people? In other words, I'm not sure. I think disbanding the committee is sending a message that is frustrating. To finish Teresa's point about what the data shows about the number of people walking our streets who are traditionally chronically homeless, people of color. The other part of that data is, and they were born and raised here. So this myth that often gets crammed down, our leadership's throats across this county is that the majority of these individuals are coming from somewhere else because we are so resource rich. Well, that is not what the data shows. What the data shows is that the majority of these individuals, if not almost exclusively, were born and raised here, which is, to me, even more disgusting that we aren't prioritizing this population. So on the contrary to what I just said, I'll also say that I have been a huge advocate for many years on many of these committees and issues that we do not need separate committees, that they should be an agenda item and a topic within every established committee. So I believe that for lived experience, for example, I think having separate committees I think often makes things more challenging and more difficult when it's just simply unnecessary. So I too also support kind of Kevin and Michael about, perhaps DEI, as a formal part of data systems performance and review. But I think it should be, if we're going to disband it, that it should be a part of all of the standing committees. Because it is a part of all of us. It is a part of all. Providers Council is 100%, needs to be 100% committed to the issue and to many of the issues, lived experience, DEI, all of the issues. So and certainly we should be a part of advocacy and advocating. So
Okay.
Madam Chair, I do want to
Yes.
say something. So having chaired the DEI committee before, there has always been issues with quorum. But I think the issue was tied to in-person quorum, and we did not count Zoom quorums. There were moments where we had quorum if both were counted, but the in-person was in fact the challenge. I think that could be alleviated if we adopt what we just adopted here in the space of whether you're on Zoom and camera on and in person, then you have the quorum. I moved it forward for discussion. When you merge something like DEI, it gets watered down. There's not a focus. It's not very intentional. It's just a caveat to whatever else is being discussed. So I'm not in support of adding it to other committees because it was DEI for a very specific reason. And it only got scary when, our governor began to attack it. But prior to that, it was intentional, it was needed. HLA may not have really been as vocal with the push, but the need was very intentional. So I'm not in support of disbanding it. What I am in support of is being very intentional with this council, with this board and other committees saying, this is a need, get involved, let's adopt the Zoom and the in-person and let's move it forward. Because as someone who has worked in social service for over 20 years, this is not something that we can water down. And if we continue to move like it's not important, or we can merge, or we can do this or do that because we're afraid of what's going to happen, that's what the reason is. Scare them and they will refuse or won't do the work. So I'm not in favor of being afraid to do what's needed. And that may be the NAACP in me, but let's do this shit, let's make it happen.
I appreciate that. I agree with you. I would hope that with some peer pressure or pressure for board members to actually step up and participate in some committees, and that with, reviewing that statement that I read today, that your committee does deep research and comes up with suggestions, what's worked in other communities, what do you want to see here? Take it to the executive committee, use our data system and performance analytics as well, and have an ask and put that advocacy committee to work alongside you. That's, I think my hope is that advocacy committee will go out. And if people are hesitant about standing up and telling their boots on the ground stories for fear of the state, that's where I think we can build that advocacy committee to people who aren't dependent on state funding to use their voices and step out. And, you know, I've mentioned this before about me engaging and having a plan to engage more faith-based communities or congregations throughout the county. And, you know, maybe they can stand up and be a really strong voice with our data, with your recommendations from your individual committees. And you don't have to put your neck out as much. I mean, what do you think of that model? Do you think it would work, or what am I missing?
Well, as Dr. Susie and Teresa, if, based on the last few meetings, are people attending via Zoom and just not in person? Is it location? Like, you know, have we talked about all of those things? I remember when I chaired, location was a concern for people.
We have talked about that. We talked about maybe switching up the location a little bit, but that isn't something that we've done. I'm not
Could you
sure.
have like a lunch meeting at a restaurant? I mean, it can be informal that way, right? In person, or they can all be all Zoom, whatever your committee wants.
How do you get put on this committee? Like, I don't know who's on this committee.
Well, I'm looking at the roster now. It's interesting you mentioned that, April, because right now, most of the members are actually representatives of government entities. Ross Silvers, Jeffrey Lorick, who's the director of the Office of Human Rights, who I'm disappointed has not been participating, since he has a responsibility via his funding from HUD to make sure that we're addressing impediments to fair housing throughout this county. Also Dominique Randall, who's with the Pinellas County. Kiera Lovett, I believe, is with the Housing Authority. So then, and then there's Trish Collins. I'm not certain which PSTA. So she's serving in Ross's stead. So there's only 6 members actually of the committee. And even just 6 members, we can't get quorum. So, you know, I still stand by my motion. It either voted up or voted down as far as these suggestions that Madam Chair has made and Esther has alluded to. You know, depending on how the vote goes, then the committee can choose to try and address it in the fashion that y'all recommended.
Teresa, I would ask, right, for you to reconsider the motion, but potentially consider again the hybrid option. And I would be willing to re-engage. You know why I disengage, but I would be willing to re-engage with the hybrid option and potentially a different location option.
Well, and y'all can even do a full Zoom. I mean, if that's easier to get people to participate. And there's no minimum. What is the minimum number for committee to be in standing? I mean, you can have 4 or 6.
Yes, that might be outlined in the charter, but I'm not sure.
I think it was 50% plus 1.
But I mean, total number.
Oh, total
Like, you can
number.
have 4 people, you can have 6 people. Sam?
So I don't think a DEI committee can be successful without a robust provider voice at that meeting. So whether you have 4 people or you have 10 people, if none of them are providers, we're not hearing a crucial voice to how the work actually gets done. So to that point, and to Michael's point, I'd love to think about changing the name to something that is what it is and also allows the provider to participate and encourage their staff to participate meaningfully.
What was that term you used?
System disparity.
Yeah, system disparity. I mean, whatever will make the state.
At the last meeting that did not have quorum, discussion of changing the name was on the agenda. You know, I think we're just dancing around and I'm sorry to belabor this point. I mean, we've discussed, this is the 2nd meeting in a row. We have addressed the issue of the DEI committee and the lack of quorum, et cetera. I'm just over it. I think we either have it or we don't. At this point, my motion is to disband it I think the executive committee can discuss how they want to address diversity, racial inequity within our system. I appreciate what April has said, that the issues of equity should be permeating throughout this entire organization. We had a study that clearly showed that we had providers who people felt that some of the consumers felt they were being treated differently because they were African American or because they were young or whatever the data showed. The purpose of having this organization is to address homelessness and address the issues that we identify within our system. We have data from our PIT, et cetera, that shows that we are not addressing the inequity of housing those that are experiencing homelessness. And it's based on our own data, based on the fact that they're people of color, et cetera. So, I don't want to continue to beat a dead horse.
But
Madam Chair, I would call for a question.
Yeah.
And move the agenda.
Or,
Was the DEI committee, it was formed in this body, correct?
yes,
So the name can be updated or changed in this body,
yes.
correct? So I agree with Sam. Ms. T, I'd like to, with your permission, do a friendly amendment. Well, not an amendment, actually, it's already been seconded on the floor, so you would actually have to pull it back because it's not a amendment to disbanding it, it's amendment to change the name and then change the dynamics of.
Are you asking me to withdraw my motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you withdrawing your second? You can do that.
I would like to
What you're
withdraw
saying.
my second.
Oh, we had the second for discussion.
Mhm.
Okay, so we have Teresa's motion to disband the DEI committee. I have a second.
There was a second. on that.
I was.
No, she was. So that doesn't.
Motion fails.
So I would like to put a motion to the floor. I'd like to put a motion to the floor to revise the name of the DEI committee to the Equity and Inclusion Task Force and move to have quorum based on Zoom and in person.
Second.
Diversity is, it's equity and inclusion is not the issue with our legislation, it's diversity.
Okay.
So the diversity is the trigger word because diversity is very specific to African American, LGBTQ, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not inclusion and equity, it's diversity.
This discussion, I'm sorry, go ahead, Sam. I didn't raise my.
Well, and my question is just for the providers, does that name change work for you that you would send people to that committee? Because I think that's the material point or one of the areas that changing the name is really important for.
And I wonder, like, if we said system disparities and inequity committee, is that? I mean, because we're trying to just we're sort of like trying to get around labeling, but also to accomplish, go back to Teresa's original point. We're trying to accomplish the inequities, solving the inequities in the system, solving the disparities in the system. And that's where I came up with the name. I don't care what the name is, but I think the point is if we're going to change the name of the committee, let's be intentional, let's be specific. We're talking about system disparities and inequity. Now, just taking out diversity, I don't, I would rather see us reflect what we're actually trying to accomplish.
Are you asking me to update the name, Jalazo?
Maybe.
Okay, so,
You want to amend your amendment?
I will amend my amendment or my motion, to change the title of the committee to Systems Disparity and Inequity Task Force.
Okay. You have a motion to amend that? Second?
I accept that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, so as of now, All right, so the name of it is
Systems Disparity and Inequity Task Force.
Task Force is replacing. So did we vote to disband the DEI committee, or we voted to change the name? So DEI has been changed to that. Thank you.
So the motion reads, Esther Matthews amends the motion to change the name to System Disparity and Inequity Task Force. April Lot seconds, motion passes.
Okay. Well, not yet.
That was
Teresa had a.
By the way, Megan did catch that. I did not, but Megan did, just so.
Thank you. I know that.
I think in order to respect Teresa and the committee and this new committee's time, effort, and ability, we gotta look at this again if no movement happens with this thing and people want to join. Because for them to calendar something, keep their schedules open and do this work, we gotta look at this and we can't let it move 4 months down the road.
Well,
We
and
gotta look at this quickly so that these two can.
Right, but I think it falls back on the committees. The committees need to bring action requests to the executive board to get permission to move forward with the advocacy, to open our mouths and really make change as a collective CoC. It can't just come from verbal that, your name of your committee now says, I see all this alarming data and real life experience. Well, tell us what you want us to do. Give me walking papers. Give me from DEI or from data system. Give me some initial tools and data that's factual, and then the advocacy committee can develop more facts and work with you to have asks and develop a plan to ask for change and promote change. And so
Madam
that's
Chair.
what's gotta go forward. Yeah.
Sure. However, I think Lieutenant Hayesh's point is a point well made, because what you're talking about is structure. What Teresa has been trying to raise is that they can't even get there because the structure of quorum is not allowing them to get there. So,
And maybe name change.
I'm hoping that the name change. But, in reading off the membership of the committee, it is predominantly, if not almost exclusively, membership, I believe, from the CoC, as opposed to the membership of the board and others who have.
Board member.
You're the only board member. Well, yeah, and without so there's an obligation, back to something you said a minute, early on, there's an obligation of. And I've made this point 4,000 times, which is that there's an obligation of everybody sitting in this room to be on a committee, right? And so it's interesting, the people who show up who want to be on the board. And when we did the application, and I said to every single one of those people, right, who wanted to apply to be on the board, show up to a committee. Where we need you is at providers. I was a broken record. Show up to providers, show up to, right, the System Disparity and Inequities Task Force. And yet they're not here. All the people who wanted to be on the board aren't here. And so we need them in committee, and everybody who's sitting here needs to also be on a committee. Speaking only for myself and several of the providers, by the way, do not have a quorum issue. Just to be clear, it was said earlier that every committee, providers do not have a quorum issue. We have not. And I suspect we will not. Nonetheless, providers can sit on the, join this, but we need everybody on the board joining a committee. I personally attend 14 committees a month on behalf of this CoC. So I'm not sure I can join one more committee.
All good.
No,
And I think committee members and committee chairs need to help grow their committee and grow our membership of the CoC outside of the board. And that's.
Madam Chair, may I have 2 comments?
Okay.
One, you do have a systems performance committee, I believe. And I would hope that systems performance committee is looking at the data through an equity lens as well. And I'm not on that committee, so I don't know if there is data that's tracking what, how many African Americans, children, youth, all of that stuff. I would hope that it is. And that you are looking at it through an equity lens. The other thing that I happened to look over at Dr. Patterson's computer, a part of your meeting packet was a race equity toolkit. I would encourage all the board members, if you've not looked at it, please read it. Because that does give you some information from this continuum of care related to how we plan to address the racial inequity, committee or no committee. You've got a toolkit. Please look at it. It's also to provide some direction for the providers on how to address racial inequity. It was done, again, as a part of the study that was done that demonstrated that we have disparity within our provider, homeless provider network. So,
Oh, great. Well,
thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the discussion.
Danielle.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to ask, I thought Esther had made a point, and maybe this was in your earlier statement of the motion of regarding location and quorum and so forth, and I don't remember if that was included in what Victoria read off, and I wasn't sure if that was still part of your final motion that you put forth for the committee, or if that was something that's tabled for later discussion, but I just.
Right, so the name was the primary point, the location and the hybrid in person is more driven by the committee.
That's right. It's up to the committee.
But I do know that those were huge challenges. And to Teresa's point, I think that for this committee, there should be communication with Sam prior to a committee meeting. Provide the data, and then the data should be driving the work of the committee. And so we have to have that strong line of communication.
We did at some point get some data that was part of one of our. But we did get some data at some point that we had asked for, that we had started discussion on, but again, not being able to make quorum has been an issue. And yes, like we've produced some things throughout the years, the study that I did years ago, the racial equity toolkit. So having produced those things, then also not seeing, I mean, I made some recommendations in that study that I'm not sure were taken up by the board, which is another thing. So it kind of gets like, all right, are we producing, where are they going?
Yes.
So it's also been a frustration on our end if we had done things throughout the years. But I agree with Sam. I really like the, like having a provider would be really helpful on this committee.
Well, I look forward to more positive things. I really do. And asks and taking bites out of that study for what are the priority asks and what's achievable right now and building on those successes and stuff. I think it's got great hope and potential, and I will do my best to make sure it works.
Madam Chair, I would ask that the staff may distribute to the entire board a copy of the previous study that we keep referring to, because I see a lot of new faces that may have no knowledge of what we're even talking about. Yes, Vic.
I just wanted to note it is on Onboard and it is online. So you can-
I can't hear you.
It is on board.
And it's online on our website. We can also email a copy out to everybody.
But just a reminder link too, because it's topic of discussion. Thank you.
And I would encourage, again, that the board members please review the racial equity toolkit for your own edification. And my final comment is this is another instance of institutional knowledge that has drained the organization. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to agenda item 6, the review and rank committee update.
Skip item 5.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
So Chair Dominique Randolph for the Point in Time Committee and I talked the other day, and we agreed, and of course we talked to David before her departure, that it was best to bring this to the board. Point in Time is scheduled right now for Thursday, January 30th. We acknowledge that there are a lot of folks very focused on hurricane recovery right now. Many of the partners involved in planning and executing this event are, municipal partners, providers who are focused on hurricane recovery. Our law enforcement partners have become a very big part of this as well. So we wanted to ask the board your opinion on whether or not we should continue on with planning January 30th PIT. If we should request an extension from HUD, they might give us a 1-month extension so that we would do it in February along with Hillsborough County. Or if we should ask HUD to forego PIT entirely this year. HUD only requires that PIT be conducted every other year. They do ask odd years, but given the recent disasters here, our HUD TA did say that that was absolutely something that we could pursue if this board wanted to pursue it. I have again talked to Chair Dominique Randall about this, and I'm happy to share her thoughts on the matter if the board would like. But I wanted to bring that to you for discussion and, if necessary, action.
I would love to hear Dominique's perspective.
Absolutely. So Dominique is, like maybe all of us, concerned both about moving forward with this event because planning it is going to be a very tight squeeze this year, and we will be on a little bit more of a skeleton crew than in years past. However, we are also concerned that PIT's really important and the data from PIT is very important. So Dominique Randall's suggestion is either that we continue on with January 30th or that we ask HUD to forego PIT entirely this year as we did in 2021 due to COVID-19. Her recommendation was not to ask for a 1-month extension because that does change the year-to-year comparison for data and doesn't offer that much more time. So that was her thoughts on the matter.
Go ahead, April.
Yeah, I appreciate the dilemma and the time that it takes to train and organize in order to do the pit, and that many of us, right, had 4 feet of water in our homes, and we are struggling with a variety of things that have fallen from that. My concern with not doing it is that, back to some of the other things that we've already discussed, is that, and I was hoping that we would have time to discuss even here today, is what we're anticipating happening to the number of people who will become homeless in the following weeks. And I think the data is going to be exceptionally important. I anticipate that the numbers are going to rise substantially. And having the data is going to be extremely important. Unlike COVID, COVID issues were really around masking and around the spread of potentially deadly illness. So the comparison is not ringing true for me. I do, however, appreciate the staffing problem with, the training and getting everybody organized.
Well, and I think that's where maybe this board today, if we want to go forward with the January, and Emery, you can go next, whoever is, that's where that advocacy committee can get out right now and advocate for more volunteers to participate in that pit count throughout the county, because I do believe those numbers are going to be significantly higher. But that's Emery.
Yeah, thank you. I can imagine that this is going to be a huge challenge because we're all focused on disaster recovery and helping the communities that we traditionally serve, which has just been exacerbated by, 3 hurricanes in 3 months. But for us, for seniors, we're seeing a huge spike in the number of seniors that are experiencing homelessness for the first time because their mobile homes are destroyed and they don't have insurance, and we don't know if FEMA trailers are going to be here. Seniors who haven't been able to maintain their homes, those homes were flooded and they are not going to be able to go back to those homes. And so these are individuals that for the first time were marginally housed, are now really experiencing homelessness for the first time. And so the data that the pit count will provide, I know, will help organizations like the Area Agency on Aging with our advocacy efforts, with our policy initiatives, as well as funding from both the state and the federal government. And so I don't know if a month difference makes a difference, but a year's difference is a huge difference that I think that we don't want to lose that data. So
Yeah.
Zach, hold on, Zach.
Go ahead, Mike. I'll go ahead. Michael. So I was just gonna say, I'm all for sounding the alarm. We just need to rally. We're all dealing with hurricane stuff, absolutely. But then I think to Anne Marie's point, makes it that much more important. How, my question, and because the sheriff's office isn't gonna be the lead on this year, and I know that law enforcement resources and public safety resources have been pulled in every direction. How much not buy-in has you had from the public safety side of things? Because it's a huge contributing factor to the numbers that are generated and going out to the areas that.
This has been more limited than they've been in years past, and I would say that that was already true before Helene and Milton hit.
Right.
And it's becoming a little bit more true. We haven't touched base with everybody yet, but it is a concern.
So, and that's what I'm thinking is as important as the data is, are you going to get the data you need if you didn't change it?
I will say that I do think if we move forward with PIT, regardless if we do it in January or February, we're going to have to put a very big asterisk in the report and in our submission to HUD that explains that no, we're not going to be able to do it like we have in years past.
Right. And just my opinion, if you can't do something right, there's no point in doing it. You're gonna do all this work, you're gonna rally, and then you're gonna rely on these numbers for anything, and they're not good numbers. You're putting bad information in and you're gonna get bad work out.
Yeah, but how many people do we need?
A lot.
What's the number? Tell me the number.
So last year we had 396 volunteers.
All right, so we need 400 volunteers.
We can certainly do it with less. We've done it. That was the most volunteers that we've ever had. I would say to get to the year before we had 350, I would say at an absolute minimum to be impactful, we would want at least 300 volunteers. But again, we'll have to have that big asterisk that notes that discrepancy.
How many of those were law enforcement?
There's an actual percentage written in there. I want to say that it was around 11% for law enforcement, but I might be wrong about that, and I don't want to give you that information. So I'll have to look in the report.
When's the date you need to let HUD know whether we're doing this or not?
There is no specific date right now. I reached out to HUD TA about it, and she is gathering a little bit more information for us. I've never asked for.
So if we have an advocacy committee, or if we all, if we develop a plan to have asks of municipalities and other organizations to please join us in this count. And, here are the training dates and here's the date and all that business. A big push to get a commitment, within the next month.
My concern there would be the planning efforts that go into creating the materials that we need to schedule those trainings and to push out the volunteer registration. For instance, volunteer registration is now done collaboratively with Pinellas County. Pinellas County's IT department they're actually the ones who help us with the app and volunteer registration. To have a meeting with Dominique and Dapo from Pinellas County on Tuesday, I think, to go over all of this stuff. Because we are moving forward as though we are doing PIT, because of course we want to make sure we're ready for it if and when it comes.
Yeah.
So we would need the county's assistance and the committee's assistance to ready ourselves to register those volunteers.
Have you had any discussions with Hillsborough County, and how exactly are they approaching it? I know that they asked for the extension, but how are they planning to overcome some of the challenges that you're describing that we have?
That's a great question. And now that you've asked it, I'm kicking myself for not having specifically. Sarah Kane is co-chair of the Hillsborough PIT, and she is thankfully a member of our PIT planning committee. So we are working closely together. But I am embarrassed to say that I have not asked her how Hillsborough is approaching this year, and I'm going to do that now. Thank you.
You for that.
Go ahead.
As participating in PIT counts a couple of years in a row, and I think getting the volunteers is the least of the problem. It sounds like Victoria needs to set up a timeline and thresholds or whatever for training or other resources and get back to us, because I don't think we have enough information to make the decision today. Like,
Do we have another meeting between now and?
I'll Zoom do
Sounds like
something.
that.
She's got, everything's in her basket, it sounds like.
Well, it
To
sounds
get
like you
things
need
ready.
to meet with the county on Tuesday. And see, is it Tuesday that you're meeting with?
I
them?
believe it's Tuesday.
Yeah, and see if they're gonna be able to commit to it.
They are committed. It's the bandwidth that they have trying to make it happen. It's tight, but they are at least on board right now.
Well, if they're on board, I think we need to do all we can to, get support from, like I said, municipalities, other organizations to join in these efforts. Yeah, Sam?
I mean, 11-point law enforcement, we have less engagement with law enforcement than we have in the past. And law enforcement has many more commitments than they did last year. So to Zach's point, how are we going to get them there? It's not just law enforcement either. I think about the volunteers that come from Clearwater. It's like municipal service workers, sanitation. All of these agencies are doing 50 things that they weren't doing last year. And I don't think we've looked specifically at it, but logic suggests that there's a correlation between how many volunteers we have out there and what our numbers are.
Yes.
Because we know we never get a perfect count. If we undercount, we undercut the data. Data is always a two-legged stool for this.
Yeah.
There's the pick count that shows something that we don't see in HMIS. But if we're seeing all these new homeless seniors, new homeless other folks, which we are, I'm sure we're going to see that in the HMIS data. I think we're rolling the dice on what we see with Pitt. If we have a small output, especially with our really experienced volunteers from municipal agencies, including law enforcement, if they're not there in force and we end up with a reduced count, then what are we really saying?
Right.
It's not the only report that goes up, right?
Right.
I'm not involved.
Hick and
Park, right?
Yeah, exactly.
For what it's worth, HIC would absolutely still occur. And for anybody who doesn't know, HIC is the housing inventory count. That is the count of sheltered homelessness that is done for HMIS. And I do have the number. I can put up the number of volunteers broken down by category. So local government affiliates were 24.3% of volunteers. The VA was 5.6%. Law enforcement and EMS fire were 9.87%. Community-based organizations were 43.04%. Public transit, 1.52%. Healthcare employees, 1%. Public defender's office, 4.05%. And unaffiliated volunteers, 11.14%.
Go ahead, Teresa.
Is there any I'm just looking and recognizing the fact that we no longer have a voice from 211 or whatever the current name is that also has a dashboard that I was hoping that we might be looking at even for today's meeting, considering the storms we just went through. But that dashboard actually provides inquiries that are coming in through that avenue, that door, and where the zip codes, the requests for shelter, etc. And so I don't know how that would play into this discussion as well, but I'm not one that leans towards not doing the pitch at all. I don't think that necessarily helps us.
But it looks like we don't have to make this decision today because the county's going forward as of today. You're having a meeting on Tuesday to see what the plan is. Maybe you can send out an update for us in anticipation of December's meeting, the election meeting. I mean, what do you think?
I do think that December will be too late to make any amendments. But that's okay if the board wants to move forward, if it maybe wants to address it in executive committee. But I do think the December meeting will be a little late to make adjustments. I'm not advocating for canceling or moving or keeping. I want everybody to have the information as well.
Are there any motions related to this?
You even have a meeting scheduled for December? I don't see it on.
No, you're right.
I don't see it on my calendar.
That's a great point. It's November. So yeah, our next meeting would be January. Thank you.
Right. There is a meeting in December.
But we have action.
There's a COC membership meeting, that will do the election, but, yeah, the executive committee will meet again in January.
So Victoria, based on everything that's been said, you know, I do think that we need to look to you and to staff to inform and or make recommendations based on your knowledge. So based on everything that's been said, I mean, to Zach's point about the HIC and to Teresa's point about 211 and, you know, other data sets or other data elements that potentially would and could be collecting the information that we're all concerned about, in particular, Anne Marie and myself, then so tell us about that. I mean, is there a way to get to not losing the story without doing the pit?
So that's a very good question. There are a lot of places to gather data available in our community. The first contact or 211 dashboard is good for those initial contacts. HLA also has a report that we can run that shows some of those that come through the helpline. And then, of course, the HMIS data dashboards do show that sheltered homelessness. What we will lose out on if we do not do PIT is that snapshot and that year-to-year comparison. PIT is, in my experience, the kind of most referenced one-off here in the county, across the state, and in the country. And not having that data to reference is a concern. Of course, if we move forward with the PIT, it will absolutely be a scaled back version. This year will not be the big version that we had in mind. It will not be as big as last year. And we will, to, I believe, Sam's point, have to explain the difference in that data. And we will have to consider the difference in that data for years to come. So I very much believe, and I'm confident when I say we can move forward with a PIT count on January 30th. It will look different. The data will be different, but we can do it.
So, having a helpline ourselves, and 211 and you, it's the helplines are the universe of people who know there's a resource,
right?
Want to access the resource and have the capability to access that resource. Sure. So we know the universe of seniors that are experiencing homelessness is not indicative of the number of people that call our helpline with a need of having housing. So I do think the PIT count has merit, with the caveats that we are going to present as part of the data set. We had 3 hurricanes in 2024, which impacted the ability to do a larger PIT count. So, you know, that'll just be a limitation of the data, which happens in any kind of research that you do. So I do think, to the extent possible, that the PIT count should happen. And if you need more time, then you ask for more time.
Yeah, I worry, you know, again, I think that the PIT this year is absolutely necessary. I really do. And I think that some changes to how we do PIT are going to be necessary as well, by the way. I have 1,000 people who became homeless overnight in one apartment complex, not a mile and a half from, and we are struggling to get our hands around these 1,000, which includes, you know, rough count 400 kids. They are predominantly a population who will not call 211. They will not leave their home. They will not ask for help. There's a variety of dynamics with this 1,000 that I'm just talking about, which is, you know, not anything compared to all of it. So how we even count them is going to be different. And I can assure you that it would not be a law enforcement presence. It would have to be a much different individual who's getting their
And we can be intentional with that about having.
But I'm just saying, right,
Yeah.
we're talking about 11% law enforcement that we're not gonna have. I'm not sure that that's gonna hurt us as much if we replace it with another group.
We will need somebody to address encampments. In that
Yes.
case, that is law enforcement.
And the other piece is that, and I'm not, because I'm all for doing the count, I get it, the count. There's, you said 23% of municipal workers too.
Yeah,
right?
that's a big, that's.
Yes.
You're talking in the 30% of people that you
But we
don't.
can reach out
you're
to
gonna have
other
reduced.
organizations, faith-based organizations and.
The other thing I was gonna say is that you already know of the 1,000 people those poor people that lost their home,
Right.
up on Drew. Right, we have that data. Right, so this isn't data that we're gonna go find in January. We have it, it's tangible.
Well, we kind of do. Some of them have managed to, right, rehouse and, so.
Double up and stuff.
Okay, like places like Fort Myers, for example, when Ian hit, what did they do? Or Michael, up in the Panhandle, do they have COCs down there and up there respectively? Absolutely. And did they conduct pit counts during those years? What were some of their concerns? How did they address them? Because maybe, the wheel exists, and so we can, learn from that and use whatever mechanisms they did to conduct their pit counts after.
I'll go to Sean and then I'll call the question because it looks like
But
you're
I'd like
not
to
in
make-
favor of suspending it.
Right, so I'd like to make the motion that we, if that is needed, that the COC board supports doing a 2025 pit count
In the best way possible.
in January or February of next year.
Okay.
I know this is already mentioned, but we kind of have the COVID, right? I know it's not a hurricane and a lot of different circumstances, but we have a model that, and I know we need the data and all of that kind of stuff, but it didn't necessarily impact anything moving forward. The pit is a function of, and it's used in grants and things like that, but it's a function of HUD. I'm just worried about the capacity from the community standpoint and the HLA standpoint. Who's really leading this, and I haven't heard that be brought up, but that, and maybe it was mentioned earlier, but HLA is going to be leading this.
In conjunction with the county.
So that's the only other concern.
Okay, so I have a motion to move forward with the pit, either in January or February. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion in a second. We've discussed. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, fantastic. We will do our best, Victoria,
I appreciate that.
to get engagement and education out here, participation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for all that work on that. All right, so I reversed that, 5 and 6. So now we'll do, Sam, Review and Rate Committee, an update.
So the review and rank committee met, we evaluated applications. We had some really robust feedback from providers that we were not hearing enough of their input. So we took that to the executive committee sent it back to rank and review. We met again. We had a good process with I think good opportunity for feedback from providers. Prior to the process, we met with a consultant the HLA provided, and we had a robust training for rank and review committee members. Data reviewed that prior to that. And so on balance, we, despite the hurricanes and having to move at the last minute to a virtual meeting and a rescheduled meeting, and then having another meeting, I think the process overall was fair. It still left me with some challenges going into next year. In particular, I think we've struggled with rank and review to think about how the whole system fits together. We end up doing a very involved process. And the reality is we're working with the same money that we're always working with. And some of the money that we're working with has to be put at risk by putting it in tier 2. And so the end result of this process is always going to be that the projects that are ranked lower are not feeling good about that process. And that those of us involved in ranking the projects are not feeling good about the process either, because we are allocating inadequate funds in a competitive way, and we are not meeting the needs of our community. So I think the process was okay. Kevin had a really good suggestion about a previous tool that was used in applications. So I think it would be great. In some ways, in the same way we do PIT, I'd like to see us have a prep committee to think about the rank and review process ahead of time, because the rank and review team itself gets a process in hand and then executes a process. But I think the whole CoC through a committee ought to be involved in figuring out how best to do that. That's got to have a provider voice heavily involved in it, being aware of potential conflicts of interest. But the issue is we want to be data-driven. We are data-driven, but the data we're looking at is stupid is an overstatement, but it's not really relevant to performance. Even though the Data and System Performance Committee worked really thoughtfully about data benchmarks. We used HUD data benchmarks, but in reality, I don't feel like we get a good snapshot of provider performance to rank and review. So we end up ranking and reviewing widgets with not a great way to quantify how things fit into the system, even though throughout the year we've said rapid rehousing is a priority intervention for the continuum of care. The result of the rank and review process is that there's not likely to be any new rapid rehousing projects in the system. So I think we did a pretty good job with the process, but the process needs work. We all need to do that work throughout the year before we need to do it again. And we need attention to how the system works together. And I think even to the advocacy point, we need as a CoC to find a way to do some sort of classic nonprofit development work, because we need new resources in the system. All of our providers do effective fundraising. That's something that's difficult for you all to do, but you do it. We need to do some of that on behalf of the CoC to have dollars to put into this pot, because we need more resources available. We cannot solve a growing problem with stagnant resources. It's not possible. I'd love to take any questions.
That was fantastic.
Thank you, Stan. I think that was that thoughtful summary. I appreciate it.
I don't have questions, but there's many things that you said that, are, I don't even know what word to use, frustrating to me, because this idea of having a committee or whatever you called it, in advance, I advocated strongly for, because I anticipated the literally going off the train track happening, and was trying to prevent that from happening. To your point about, we have limited resources and we're trying to, set some kind of square into a circle, or, grow services when the resources are stagnant. The process of rank and review and calling for new projects was set up several years ago, much differently than what occurred. And so I think we inadvertently created a problem that we could have avoided, number one, but number two, your reference to a tool that was used this year, and which deviated from the tools that we've used historically. I have no idea, or previously, I have no idea where the new tool came from. So I do think that, your observation that we need to get very clear about this process is a point well made. Your second point, that providers need to be heavily involved, right, in understanding, conflicts and those kinds of things. I do think, again, that is something that, I've been trying to say, right, and it's only after the fact, right, that when you have the experience of it going not so well, that you're like, oh yeah, we need to be doing that. It's like, we need to have providers, because if you don't understand how A fits with Z, it's not how A and B fit, right? That can be pretty obvious, but how A and Z fit if you don't have a full understanding, it's my understanding that people didn't even submit scoring sheets, that there was a variety of challenges. And so I do think that the in advance of rank and review process needs to be strengthened, to your point, and who and how are participating in rank and view needs to be a part of that strengthening.
So I'd like to add, this was my first year on rank and review, and I did submit my score sheet.
Good.
However, the meeting, I happened to have a root canal, so I couldn't be at the final one. The tool is what I wanted to bring forward. Having sat on rank and reviews before, I've never experienced a tool where certain data sets were pre-scored. And we had no ability to lend a score to that data set. So that was my question as I reviewed it. How was it pre-scored? What was the balance to that data set? And then why wasn't that provided to the rank and review so that we could have a voice to why they received that score? That was my only question in the process. I appreciated the training. I do think that there needs to be a collaborative conversation training, whatever, before that training that we had. But outside of that, I thought it was, with the circumstances, organized. I am kind of happy that I had a root canal and wasn't that.
I'll be happy to have a it was a bad train wreck. And so I'm okay with that, but my only concern was the pre-scored data sets and not having an understanding of how those scores were captured based on the performances of the organizations, because I do think that in rank and review, you have to look at the entire org holistically, inclusive of what they've done based on the data that's been provided.
Right, to address that question directly, Esther, the pre-scoring is done by a subcommittee of data and system performance, looking at established CoC benchmark performance by the organizations. I think there's a question about how that tool gets built and whether that's the goal with that was having because that piece is objective, having it done by the data and system performance subcommittee prior to, so that rank and review can have a more limited purview. I think that would be whether that's a plus or a minus, that would be wise to discuss ahead of time. But that's the reason for that, and it's a objective, I would say not great criteria, but that it is following the national benchmarks that we have to evaluate anyway.
Okay. Kevin?
I think I'm allowed to speak, but I'm not sure.
I think you can speak in this.
Yeah, you're allowed to speak
Not
on this topic.
Yeah.
John, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how comfortable I am having in this discussion at this point. Without,
Well,
my comment is solely about the history of the tool, if that helps. And I don't, whether I'm allowed to talk about it or not. I'm just would be more conservative with these conversations at this given time.
so there was a
That's my
formal letter of complaint about the rank and review, and the executive committee is going to be discussing that after this meeting today. So
And this is a public meeting today
yes.
with minutes being taken.
Okay. I appreciate that update, and we're going to move forward with the agenda, and the executive committee is going to be addressing these issues.
I have like 10 minutes.
Yeah. You want to do the advocacy
So
committee?
would you mind?
No, fine.
As vice chair,
Sure.
and
So,
I'm fine to leave if you don't
Yep.
want to, but.
nope, you're okay. So we're going to just, so we'll move down to 7, the council committee updates. We'll just switch C up before A and B. So Emery and I could talk about the advocacy committee, but you can go ahead and take it. We have attachments there. Okay, Emery, if you want.
Oh, okay, well, sure. I am the vice chair, Kathleen Beckman is the chair. A group of individuals met
back in June to discuss the formation of an advocacy committee. At that meeting, Kathleen and I volunteered to chair and co-chair that group that we hope eventually will become a committee. And Kathleen has referenced it several times in today's meeting. So the advocacy committee in and of itself doesn't really do anything without information, data, hit count, and what is going on in the community as the CoC sees it and as the providers and funders see it. And what the advocacy committee would do would be, it would be a group of individuals who would feel comfortable advocating on behalf of the CoC and those experiencing homelessness to advance either policy or funding initiatives. So that would be the role of the advocacy committee. And so these individuals would, representing the CoC, with the authority given to it by this board, would meet with legislators, would meet with municipal staff, would meet with potential funders to advocate on behalf of the CoC and the HLA. Obviously, the executive director or the CEO of the HLA would be a person to do this in concert with the advocacy committee. And it would be individuals that would feel comfortable asking for funding or policy initiatives on behalf of the CoC, and not feel like they would be taking off they'd be taking off their other hat. So in my case, as you know, with the Area Agency on Aging, if I went into these meetings on behalf of the advocacy committee with CoC, it would be as a member of the CoC board.
With their blessing. Yeah.
With their blessing. Because it was felt that it's important for us to get in front of legislators, for us to get in front of municipal policymakers, to raise awareness and to advocate on behalf of those experiencing homelessness. And to the point of the systems disparity and inequity, that would be potentially, if the board decided, that would be something that we would advocate on behalf of. And we would have data to support what it is that we would be advocating on behalf of. This does not mean that the HLA is not going to do its own advocacy, or the CoC board is not going to do its own advocacy, but the advocacy committee would be a vehicle to prepare data in a format that could be shared with legislators and to actually go and meet with them. And again, not just legislators, but municipal staff. So I think that's what we were hoping.
Yes.
I think that's what we wanted to see as a goal of this. And this, of course, came as a result of the law, anti-camping law, that passed earlier this year.
Yeah, did you print out a copy of that flow chart kind of thing about the advocacy committee? Yes, it's over there. Oh, it's over there. Okay, so it's over there. We've talked about it. Anne Marie's got it. So again, direction needs to come from suggested by individuals, but hopefully suggested by committees. Again, committees do the work, do some initial research, use data, develop an ask, bring it to the executive committee. The executive committee, or does it go to the advocacy committee first and then the executive committee for approval? And then it comes back to this entire board, and you all are aware and know what's going to be going on out in the public and in conversations with decision makers, elected officials, all that, maybe the press, and you'll know what tools we're using, what that one pager looks like. And that's our proposed flow. And we hope you'll join the executive committee, and we hope committee chairs are, going to be aware of it. And I'll tell you, if we don't get asks I'll come up with some proposed asks, you know, things that I think we should be doing, but really, it's gotta come, you know, this is, all these little cogs in this machinery and wheel need to work together. So that's our update on the advisory or the advocacy committee. So I appreciate you letting us jump ahead. Any quick questions? Okay.
I just want to say, I have to leave, but
Yes.
I just want to thank the HLA staff for continuing to do the good work in the absence of an executive director, and for Mick for stepping in to serve as that. I know when a board chair takes on that role, it's a lot of extra work for them, but it's an even more amount of work for the HLA staff. So I hope that they're going to be recognized in some way for the valuable work that they continue to do. So thank you so much, and good luck in this process to find a new director. I have to leave.
Thank you. All right, Funders Council, is Elise gonna present a lot? Well,
I can't present. I'm not allowed to have voice or vote until the next time we convene.
Providers Council, Kevin?
Well, I mean, the last meeting was a joint meeting,
Okay, go
so
ahead and
it's really,
summarize.
you know, I'll speak for both those meetings. It was September 13th was our last meeting. We're currently in the process of rescheduling our next meeting due to the hurricane. We needed to reschedule that, but on the meeting on September 13th is when we took action on our quorum and participation to 3 of our meetings being 100% virtual and 1 of those joint meetings being in person. As a result of quorum issues for that joint meeting. So we do struggle with the joint meetings, but when we have our provider council meeting, we haven't struggled with that. So we haven't changed our provider council process quorum at all. It's still in person. We also, the HLA presented on the DCF Challenge Grant and their process for putting that out. That has been put out now. I'm seeking people to apply for that. We also took a look at the priority populations as that's coming up, needing for action as well, which will be at the next meeting, which we're waiting on rescheduling for the voting on the priority populations. And that's all I remember from it. I don't have minutes, so I'm
Okay.
basing it off the memory and the agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that update. Sam, data system and performance?
Yeah, data system and performance. We heard a great presentation about the scan system, which is a kiosk for requesting services, which is being piloted at St. Vincent de Paul. So excited about those opportunities. We continue to Teresa's earlier point, definitely look at an equity lens with how we're looking at the data. The disparities that we're seeing in data are persistent and consistent. So every month, the data looks roughly the same and is always alarmingly disparate. So we continue to look at that. We have been doing okay with quorum. We do a mixed hybrid meeting, and that's worked pretty well. And otherwise, there's nothing really new to report that needs board attention. I'll say I am excited about the format of template notes to share in a way that encourages action from other committees on relevant pieces of the puzzle. So I'm looking forward to seeing how our committees can work more effectively together and with the board with information shared back and forth. So looking forward to that. Our longstanding vice chair had Ricky Zanker from Catholic Charities has let us know that he's going to be leaving the committee. He is today is his last day at Catholic Charities. So grateful for his support and work over the years.
2 things. Sam,
Yeah, please.
One with Ricky, has anybody from emergency shelter stepped up?
We haven't gotten there yet, but we will. Yeah.
So now you got the vice chair.
Yeah. And Zach, also thank you for your longstanding commitment to that committee. It's been miss you.
That's probably not going to do it anymore.
No, I don't blame you. You've been giving us that warning for a long time.
Yeah. The other, who's the point of contact on the kiosk? I want to see those.
It's Brian McCurry from St. Penny's. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Patterson.
Well, we discussed at length, so there's not that much more that we have to say, but I think I'm hopeful that we'll get some renewed energy into this committee, and I'd love to work more directly with you, Sam, and with you all in the advocacy committee, and maybe have just some more direct communication between us two, which I think would be really helpful for us.
Yeah.
And then also, we do not have a vice chair currently, so it would be also helpful for us to have a vice chair, I think, keep this going as well. So I'll keep that short.
Thank you. Michael or Gary? Is Michael? Gary? Lived experience?
The only update I would have to say is, with Victoria's help, we reached out, make sure that everybody had shelter and was okay before and after the storm. So everyone is well. They've also expressed a desire, if we need someone to go out and run surveys for the homeless and such, they have friends and network out. They're more than willing to step up to the plate and help out in any way they can. They're actually ready to get back up on the horse and get back to work, so to speak.
Fantastic. That's good.
So, but other than that, everyone is okay. As I said, Victoria helped me out a lot. We called around, making sure everybody was in a shelter, had access to it. Afterwards, were they okay? Were they located? So everybody is alive and well. But the only update I can give you at this point.
Thank you. Thank you for that hard work. We appreciate it.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can I just add to that? I just want everybody to know how much work Gary put in before and after the storm. I thought that it was really remarkable. Gary called every single lived experience committee member and regular participant to make sure that they were in shelter or had an evacuation plan. When he identified committee members who were sheltering in a storage unit, he immediately called me, and we did everything we could until we finally got a hold of them and got them out of the storage unit. Gary then followed up with every single member and regular participant after the storms to make sure that they were okay and that they had everything that they needed, and checked in with me if anybody did need anything. And that work and that commitment didn't go unnoticed by me or by the members. And I just wanted the board to make sure it didn't go unnoticed here as well, because it was really valuable. And you may have very well saved a couple of lives or made sure that people didn't get hurt by what you did. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you too, Victoria. I know it takes all that coordination from you as well.
I will also do PIT planning.
Sure.
So PIT planning did not meet in October. Our meeting was interrupted by Hurricane Helene. But we are meeting again on Tuesday. Our meeting on Tuesday is virtual at 3:00 p.m. Anybody would like to join us. And then December, January, and February, we will be meeting in person at Allendale United Methodist Church here in St. Petersburg. And we will be rocking and rolling with the 2025 pit count as we have discussed. So that's my update.
I'm sorry, Victoria, what time is that Zoom meeting on Tuesday?
That is 3:00 p.m. We go 3 to 4:30. If we finish up a little early, subcommittees get to meet in a breakout group.
Fantastic. All right, we're on agenda item number 9, the anti-camping legislation and CoC task force update with Mick. You all good, Mick? You've got it here.
What do you need from me? I'm sorry.
Agenda item 9, the anti-camping legislation and CoC task force update. Are you? Or
That's the email.
Oh, that's the email. That's what I said in the beginning, and as I was rambling on, I'm sorry.
oh, I'm sorry.
I thought that was gonna be in the beginning. And I thought I was done. That's fine. Hold on a second. So, the task force that we are working on the rescheduling of getting that momentum started again on around that. We do know that we all know the recent storms have impacted that. And I live in Tampa. I don't live in Pinellas County, but I'm seeing the encampments that are coming up in that area. I've not driven around here too much to look around, but I know they're coming up rapidly in Tampa. Are they popping up over here in Pinellas?
Yeah, I mean, following the storm, I would say it was a coordinated effort to pop them up. By the way,
Pardon me.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, yeah, I think that's true. I mean,
They were literally
popping up. Yeah, and in our area, it was intentionally that they were popping up, right? They were setting them up like in Best Buy area. And I mean, we were setting up camping. We were setting it up because we had to shelter. We had to shelter a lot of people who were, overnight displaced. So I would imagine that what you're seeing in Tampa, right, is for the same reason, right, that they've been displaced and or suddenly lost their home. So I don't know about other, kind of formally talked about encampments, but we've set up camps. So
yeah, on that point, so thank you, Victoria, for notes. So we are working on rescheduling, getting the task force back on track. I'm working with the team on that and reviewing all the dates. You all know, if you don't know already, I have zero experience when it comes to what you all do. And I've come to appreciate and respect what you all do in a very, very immense fashion. I'm learning on the job, so to speak. What I do bring is executive, private sector experience on how to get things done. So I'm hoping I can help bring some of that into this conversation. So anyway, those items are being worked through with the team. They're getting it scheduled. We are working towards getting a new CEO in place as quickly as possible for the HLA, and look forward to getting everybody's feedback on that process. We don't want to do it in a vacuum. One of the observations I've made since I was on the board, and now I am the board director over the last almost 4 years, is we've interviewed a new CEO every single year I've been on the board. So from a business perspective, if I take my nonprofit hat off and I put on my executive hat, that represents an issue. Where that is, systemic, whatever, we're going to figure it out because we're going to figure it out together as a group. It's not going to be done in a vacuum anymore. We're all going to be involved in that process. And if it means we have to recruit a different talent, we're going to do that. But I'm going to rely on, and so is the board, feedback from folks in this room and people on the executive committee that are going to participate in that process this time around. We have a meeting on that on Monday. I know it's off topic, just real quick on the diversity and inclusion conversation. I wanted to provide some personal insight on that. I know it's past just something that I've experienced personally, just where I'm coming from too, because y'all don't know me. The last hurricane had a significant impact on me when it came to exactly what you guys were talking about. And changing the word to system is really, because I live in a neighborhood and I apologize, but I live in a neighborhood that is traditionally, it's a Latino and African American. I lived there in Town and Country for over 30 years. And my perspective has been, this is our home. This is where we've lived for 30 years. And my wife and I really haven't engaged with the community. That falls on me, by the way, right? It falls on me. God had a different plan. And I watched the community come together in the span of 4 days in a way that was amazing. You had Vietnamese families, African American families, Latino families, mutts like me, I call myself a mutt, come together, share resources, work together. My neighbor emotionally who went through Cat 5s under communism was my greatest resource of support and inspiration. We did not communicate via English, but his kids could communicate with me. And when you have somebody tell you Cat 5s are, I mean, Cat 3 is nothing, that they've been through Cat 5s under communism, it puts life in perspective. And the last 3 weeks has put life for me in perspective. And I don't want to get on my soapbox, but I just wanted you guys to know where I'm kind of coming from. Adding system as far with that, I applaud because I'm within a community. I'm not African American. I'm not Latino, but I was impacted by the system because Town and Country is being left behind by the community, by the city, by the government. So there are people outside of racial boundaries that have been impacted from a community perspective. I just wanted to add that point of view. It absolutely taught me a lesson. I'm an old guy, but I can learn some new things. So I applaud the fact that we've switched that name just for that reason, because I live in a community that I observed that it wasn't just traditionally people that have been included in that class. It was all of us. And you know what? All of us have come together and waved to each other. Anyway.
Put the neighbor back in hood.
Amen. So I asked for everybody's grace as I learn this and what everybody is trying to accomplish. My ability to organize executively and see process issues, because I'm a recovering supply chain engineer. So when a process happens, and now I'm in the health insurance industry, so I can apply it there. But when I see process situations, I'm pretty good at identifying them and getting from point A to point B really, really fast. So is there anything else you need from me, Victoria? Or
I have a couple questions going back to the anti-camping legislation. One question is a comment really, which is that I'm hoping that we are going to, when we reconvene the committee, that again, that we're going to put another lens on the anti-camping because of the recent storms and the fact that camping is being set up, sometimes even intentionally, but certainly out of necessity. And then my second question really is to you, Lieutenant H, which is, do you have any insight on, what that looks like in Pinellas County, what it might look like in Pinellas County, what the position of our law enforcement partners, in particular, Sheriff Galtieri, who I know was moved to almost tears relative to the largest water rescue in Pinellas County's history, and the looting and some of the positions that he has taken publicly on some of these issues. I have been so very, very grateful for his leadership and his willingness to call it what it is.
His authenticity.
Say it again.
His authenticity.
Yeah, and truly, I mean, but in any case, so can you give us anything relative to anti-camping, right? Because I just think they're going to collide here in a minute, and I just want to know what that's going to mean.
I don't have any update. However, it is on radar for when my colonel gets back into town to bring up to him, because it's a concern. You're not the first person to ask me that. You're not going to be the last before January. I mean, if anybody that's been around our sheriff, he's got a common sense approach to things. So I can't speak for him or what our agency is going to do exactly. I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, that's where I'm at with it, and that's where I would be with this. I mean, there's allegedly clarification coming to this law. Hopefully it is taken in account the last 3 storms, or 4 storms that the state of Florida has dealt with. So hopefully any clarifications take those things in mind, and the camps that we had to pop up in response to storms that occurred overnight. So
do you have any information on FEMA providing any kind of trailers or housing? So I know that FEMA's offered hotel vouchers, but we don't have hotels available.
I had 2 people that work for me. One just got his trailer
A FEMA trailer?
Well, yeah, his house was destroyed during the first storm, and he just got it Sunday.
So they're not putting FEMA trailers out in some great big acreage area.
they'd be getting hooked away and stolen if they were. No, there's, no, yeah,
No? Okay.
that's my knowledge.
But my understanding is they're responding to people that go online and apply
Individually.
as opposed to just going and creating areas that have
Proactively
FEMA.
creating, yeah.
Yeah, that's what we've experienced over in Hillsborough, and based on conversations, people that you would expect to qualify for something other than a hotel that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
There is no hotels, aren't getting the support right now at all. There's a lot of frustration in Tampa. I don't know about over here.
Oh, over here. Victoria?
I wanted to, just let everybody know, I am working, right now, I'm waiting on confirmation from them. They've told me that they're very in, but I'm waiting on confirmation. I'm working on scheduling a virtual information session with a FEMA representative so that we can host a virtual CoC info session.
That's good.
With FEMA so that the community can come and ask questions, and that will include providers. So providers, if you have questions, I promise I will put that information out as soon as it is confirmed. We are really shooting for that November 12th date. So hopefully that'll be confirmed soon, hopefully today. I also wanted to let everybody know that I know that some municipalities are still working to address this anti-camping law. I didn't have a chance to listen into the whole meeting yesterday, but I do know that this was on the City of St. Pete City Council meeting agenda for yesterday. And I do believe that they have made some modifications, or the council voted to make some modifications to their laws. I'm not going to speak about it because I haven't done the research to tell you what it is. But I do want everybody to be aware that that is happening. It is still happening. And we'll definitely have more information for that at the next task force meeting.
Victoria, I think this is a perfect time for us to reach outside of just the providers and do some real true outreach to bring people in on this info session. Sometimes the information is very boxed in, and this has affected far-reaching.
Yes, and we do.
FEMA info session.
Yeah.
We will absolutely post that on social media, and we send that invitation to about 1,500 people as well, directly through email. But absolutely, and please, once it goes out there, please share it with your networks, because I'm really excited about this. I have questions for FEMA. I'm sure everybody else does too.
The city municipalities are included in that.
And as far as the task force meetings, we thoroughly kind of discussed and shared experiences with the possibility of using portable classrooms from Pinellas County Schools. Really is not a realistic or easily accomplished task. Permitting, location, all that stuff. Victoria and Daisy and others brought in the Dignity bus that's used on the eastern side of the state, which I think is more promising and affordable. But we'd need an organization to take that on, or some group of organizations. So those were two takeaways, but yeah, Ross.
Yeah, Victoria, thanks for the information session. I was going to ask for that, so I'm glad you're doing it. I think for those of us here who are not providers like myself, would love to see something coming to us that gives us a little snapshot in terms of what's the impact upon the providers from the hurricanes. I just know anecdotally that St. Vincent de Paul and the beaches is gone. Has nowhere to operate out of. So I'm just in terms of how does it impact services to the homeless in general. So we just kind of know where the providers are at.
That's a great question. So, so that I can clarify what we need to do. I know that, for instance, Kevin in here can tell you about the impacts that Foley has suffered, but would you like us to put together like a survey and send that out to providers? Okay.
And I think that'd be real helpful for an advocacy group. Again, it's data and it's narratives and stories that don't resonate.
Before we reinvent the wheel, Community Foundation of Tampa Bay has put together a needs list. There's Pinellas Community Foundation, and there might be other outreach that has already occurred with surveys and grants and funding and stuff. So,
if it already exists, that's a great.
Yeah, I just don't. I would collect that data first and then see who may be missing.
If I can just add, thank you for that, Sean. What I see is a lot of silo stuff happening and no collective stuff happening. So how do we bring it to a collective? Because yes, Urban League is doing something, Community Foundation, but they're doing it very silo driven to, I feel, bring funding into their org to then provide a resource. Where's the collective piece? How do we bring everything together where it's not funding driven, but community driven?
Are we on the topic of Hurricane Helene and Milton? Or are we not there yet?
We're on the anti-camping legislation.
Oh, I thought we were on.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, it kind of dovetails
Yeah.
because the task force has been
Yeah.
impacted by the hurricane. So I'm okay. We can, I hope y'all are okay with skipping a break.
Yeah.
You okay? All right, so we can combine 9 and 11. So go ahead if you have
Okay,
comments.
so I do think, some of this information about, what's happening to providers, to communities, to left behind communities, to, I am hearing in Pinellas County, lots of communities who are using the same language around feeling forgotten, left behind, not prioritized. What I really wanted to talk about specifically is, kind of changes to the system that we know relative to the storms in terms of the number of people who are now housing unstable and the number of people who in fact cannot return to their homes and will not be able to return to their homes probably for the next several years, and the impact to staff. So I want to talk about staff in particular first. So like everybody, many of my staff at Directions for Living were impacted. 12% lost their homes entirely. 100% of them, were impacted by things like food spoilage and loss of power. And they are, the majority of our staff are, that ALICE category, right? They are the asset income limited group. And I have applied for funding, for example, with the Pinellas Community Foundation, when they released their funding application for emergency funds. I applied for those funds after Helene and increased that funding request after Milton to be able to include serving and assisting my staff, and it was denied. The funding was denied, and it was denied with a sentence that was in all cap and all bold that said, "You shall not, you will not. The only way you can get this funds is if you are not assisting your staff." So I just want to say to this group, and I'm happy to share it with anybody.
I'm on that.
Hang on.
I'm on that board. So you
Okay.
can share it with me.
So I'll share it. It is going to become a letter to the editor. It is going to become a letter to every board member of the Pinellas Community Foundation. By the way, I do not believe this is unique to the Pinellas Community Foundation. And in advance of our application to the Pinellas Community Foundation emergency funds, I had this conversation with Doug and Cooley, their president and CEO. In any case, I'm just going to say to you that my fear right now is that if we are not taking care of the helpers, that 6 weeks from now, which is an arbitrary number that I've just made up in my head, but as a trauma-informed care expert, which I am, and many of you in this room are also trauma-informed care experts and have committed your professional careers to that issue. What I will tell you is that 6 weeks from now or some number from now, we are going to be in trouble in this community. Forget Pitt. If Directions for Living does not have its 350 employees, 99% of them impacted by one or both, 12% of them lost their homes altogether, many of them living in squalor. And I believe that my statistics are true for everybody in this room. Lieutenant Hayes just simply said, right, he had 2 who lost everything and who are waiting on housing. I believe that to be true for every person in here. If I were to ask how many of you know somebody who lost everything, that you all have your hand in the air. So what I'm saying to you is that if we are not advocating for taking care of the people who take care of the people, 6 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks, whatever the number is from now, we are in trouble. We are in trouble. And I don't know what this dynamic that has occurred for many years, by the way, prior to a hurricane, right? Which is that nonprofits are greedy, we're money hungry. All we want to do is take. This nonsense that goes on about providers is now playing itself out in providers cannot support their staff. We are not allowed to support their staff. By the way, I submitted prior to COVID, actually right after COVID, the same thing occurred, right? And I said to the Pinellas Community Foundation, I said, listen, if we are not, I submitted a proposal, which by the way, the Pinellas Community Foundation funded, and then Pinellas County Human Services said no, that we would not take care of staff through COVID. What we all know happened, by the way, in response to that is a mass exodus of employees, and we all became in dire straits as a result of a vacancy issue. What I'm telling you right now is I've had 3 staff in 1 week walk out. They've walked out. I'm hearing from other providers that they are, so we are going to see a mass exodus. I understand that there's a mass exodus of people leaving the state of Florida.
St. Petersburg staff.
The city of St. Petersburg staff, I mean, again, when you do the multiplier, right? I have 350. The city of St. Pete has probably, I don't know what, 30,000 employees. I don't know what the number is, but their number is, you know, if we do the math, the fact of the matter is that I have activated SISM teams for all kinds of critical incidents that have occurred across this county. We are going to be in trouble if we are not willing and able to develop systems and processes that allow us to be emergency responders to an emergency. So even at Directions for Living, for example, prior to, right, these hurricanes and this type of disaster, in order to get services at Directions for Living, it was a diagnostic process. You had to go through an intake. You had to go through an assessment that was often hours in length, right? You had to have a diagnosis of a mental illness. You had to whatever. We too had to pivot to say, it is all of us, right? It is all of us. You do not need a mental illness to who haven't been impacted by what has just occurred. And so we too had to pivot. What I am not seeing is that others are pivoting to how do we be appropriate trauma-informed care responders to our community? How do you get financial support if you aren't impoverished? How do you get financial support? I can promise you that everybody needs a financial support right now for the things, right? The first hurricane occurred in a non-payroll week for Directions for Living. My staff lost all their food, right? They have littles too. They lost diapers. They lost all the same things, right? And I'm not allowed to assist them, right? And so I just think that we have to start in terms of advocacy, in terms of even our system of care. We've got to be thinking differently for the next, I don't know what. When I talk to the electrician at the Standards Apartment, right? They're being told you're going to be able to get back in a month or two. The electricians looked me straight in the face, as close as I am to Lariana, and said, it will be 2 years. Whatever it is that they're being told, it will be 2 years before they can move back into these apartments, right? So we have to, as a system, we need to be thinking, what can we anticipate happening for Thanksgiving, for Christmas? My little 4-year-old grandson, right, says to me, Yaya, I am so sad. And I said, why are you so sad, baby? He said, because they all have to start all over. I said, who has to start all over, baby? He said, all the toys that are by the road. If you aren't paying attention when you drive down the street to the number of houses who have everything they own by the street, by the way, and it remains there, it still sits there, right? Because of all the reasons that we know. If we aren't understanding that our children have been impacted, Madeira Beach still doesn't have schools, for flip's sake, right? I mean, anyway, you guys know the story, but if we aren't thinking differently as a system of care, and because we are the trauma-informed experts, that we aren't thinking through the lens of what we can reasonably anticipate, right now, to occur 6 weeks from now, 8 weeks from now, as people go to Christmas, right? Who are living, by the way, our occupancy, I was in Tallahassee this week, our occupancy rate in Pinellas County is 98%. There is not a hotel room to be had. By the way, you should be thinking, who is making up that 98%, right? If they are being paid for by FEMA, so right now in Tallahassee, I was told, right, the Sand Pearl on Clearwater Beach typically is $400 a night. FEMA is paying $850 a night for the hotel room in Sand Pearl. It's 100% occupied. Right now, so who are those people? And when FEMA stops paying that $850 a night, where are those people going? So I'm just saying, I know you know the information as much as I know the information, but contextually, we have to add it to everything that we are doing, which is to say, how can we are the experts. How can we reasonably predict what is going to be true of our communities, including Hillsborough, but Manatee, Pasco, all of us, but Pinellas, what can we reasonably predict will become true 6 weeks from now? It is becoming true as we sit here, by the way, as we sit here. What is going to be true? And how are we pivoting our service provisions to include those new challenges and new dynamics that are going to be stacked on top of what we already knew and we already had, right? I am terrified.
COVID 3.0.
I am terrified.
I just saw, I was looking to the screen, to Commissioner Flowers, but it looks like she just left a little bit ago. As far as, is the county, planning on coordinating, addressing, what is their plan? How do we partner with them? Any of that? Yeah.
I can provide some information just because I'm in meetings, but please, everybody of course knows I don't work for the county, but I'm just going to throw that out there anyway. Pinellas County, Dominique Randall has been really, really involved. I'm sure many of the providers have been working very closely with her in trying to coordinate services and connect people with some of the services that they need. And so I know that has been a really sincere effort. The county warehouse is full of hurricane supplies right now, but those are coming in from the state and whatnot, largely, as I understand. They are coordinating outside donations. They're getting donations from Milwaukee and places like that as well. But largely, as I understand, what they are working with are going to be state and federal resources. But Dominique,
donations are good, but it's.
Well, we gotta let staff, staff have to be, we have to allow the second tier first responders,
Yes.
right? Because I've been told no, okay, multiple times. And I'm telling you that, right, I had 3 staff walk off. They literally walked off. And so if that is any indication of what's getting ready to happen, which is, right, I'm out of here because I've got to have the support that I need.
I have a Pinellas Community Foundation meeting next Thursday, so I'll make sure I echo your words. So I'm on that board for the.
I do know that there's an emergency, it's called DSNAP, disaster SNAP. If you don't know already, please put it on your list. Pinellas County is in phase 2, which means that it will go live on Sunday. Which I believe is November 3rd. And you have to pre-register for it. It is my understanding that it does not have the same income limitations and other things. And it's exclusively for people who are not already receiving SNAP benefits. It is a disaster SNAP. So please get that out to all of your team members. And ask them to, set an alert so that they can apply on Sunday. You have to pre-register.
And they're also gonna have a walk up at Tropicana, one of the parking lots at Tropicana Field.
After you pre-register, correct? Yeah. So please get that out to all of your team members, to all your families, to all your people. I will also say, kind of as a good news story, which is that I did have a donor come forward to assist 36 families who were going to be displaced. and with a contribution directly to these families of approximately $100,000. We have prevented 36 families from becoming homeless, and it's not even something that we would be able to capture. The other thing I want to say is, like Nick, I too was impacted. I was flooded, which gives me, and so was Kathleen, and I'm assuming others in the room. I too had 4 feet of water in my first floor, and so it has given me an experience that it is important, I think, to be able to tell some of the stories about feeling forgotten. Just as an example, getting people to your home to assist is very, very difficult. But if you can get people to your home to assist you, for example, in pulling everything out, the cost associated with these services is outrageous. And I, do not have $150,000 in my bank account. I'm happy to share with you, I do not have that kind of money. And so consequently, if I do not have a 50% cash deposit for every service that I need, I cannot get the service. So as we sit here today, because I have heard nothing from my insurance company, I still have no walls, I still have no floors, I still have no doors, I still have none of those things, and I do not anticipate having them before the first of the year. In addition to that, right, I spend 4 hours every Saturday at the laundromat because I have no washer and no dryer. And in addition to that, I have no stairs, right? I have none of the things. But I had no idea, for example, that I had to go apply for a permit in order before work could be started in my home. I had no idea. And so I went down there to the city of Largo because someone said to me the day before yesterday that I needed to do that, which I did not know. And so I went to the city of Largo to apply for my permit and was treated cruelly, capital cruelly. And in fact, one of the sentences that was said to me was, "It's not our responsibility or job to tell you that you need a permit." So I just want to know who the F's job it is, right? Because I'm not a builder. I'm not a home builder.
There was some communication out recently that they are supposedly lightening up on the requirements.
Well, I asked them that because I heard that too, right? That I don't need a permit to hang drywall. That's absolutely not true, she says to me. Not true. You absolutely need a permit to hang
In
drywall.
a flood zone, yes, you do need, if you weren't in a flood zone, you would not.
Yeah, I'm in a flood zone. I'm in A.
Well,
So-
different Clearwater has set up a permitting kiosk down on Clearwater Beach. So some are trying,
I'm just saying that if it is this difficult for me,
myriad of challenges. Yes.
this difficult
Yes.
for me,
With resources.
and I just say me as an example of, I have a job, I'm not at risk of losing my job. I have resources, I have a bank account, I have, access to family and friends, a variety of things. If this is this difficult for me, the people who do not have the list of things that put me less at risk, although it certainly was a unifying event, right? The flood
Yes,
really
it
didn't
was.
care.
Nope.
The fact of the matter is that there are going to be people, I think we're going to have to think through the system of navigators, of navigation. Having a HUD information session is going to be the first step. How are we going to help people who've now become homeless or housing unstable with navigating what is a very complicated system?
Right. And other communities, Fort Myers most recently, and others have gone through it. So we can learn from them, but I think the message, Victoria, is as soon as possible, if a FEMA expert, we can do that Zoom call, webinar, whatever it is that's interactive. And if we can submit questions ahead of time to make it as efficient, whatever. But
Right, because people are hearing, for example, that FEMA's out of money, right?
Which is
People
nuts.
are waiting 6 and 8 weeks to get a FEMA trailer. Are trailers coming? Are they going to be set up in mass? Is it going to be just individual? Is it only if you've, there's a lot of things that we at this moment, right? Again, and thinking through the lens of trauma experts, right? Having the information is going to be helpful, but in addition to that, us anticipating, then therefore, what will be the likelihood of the people we care about falling off one cliff after another? And how do we shore up those cliffs? I'm just telling you, I think we have to think differently about how we're going to anticipate the cliff, shoring up the cliff, being able to pivot in a way that will be meaningful to the people that we care about.
Real quick, on the FEMA/insurance conversation, I can speak a little bit to both of those because I'm involved in the industry. What we're finding out is if FEMA knows that you have any kind of insurance coverage for your home, you're going to the bottom of the list right away.
Right.
No matter how much coverage you have or what it
don't
is, you'll have amen, right? That piece. And as far as the insurance process, just so y'all know what's going on there, because I'm in that industry, they're looking at people who are completely without a home right now first. And that's massive as the priority list.
Yeah.
So I'm in the industry and I'm not even, I have no pull. I'm at the bottom of the list because my home is still considered livable.
Yep.
Because I didn't lose a lot of the house. It's just the downstairs portion. And we were able to react pretty quickly. So I know it's frustrating. It's frustrating for people in the industry. I don't even get special consideration because it's purely on the amount of loss, how massive it was.
Yeah. Impact.
Are you going to get any FEMA support? You have insurance. You're going down the list too, because they're supporting the people that are completely destitute, have no home and all that kind of stuff. That just.
Exactly. And so with that information, we have to anticipate, right, how we are responding is my point. And, trauma sensitivity and being trauma informed, is as important as it has ever been.
I'll reach out to some CoC chairs and in other parts of Florida that have gone through this
And
earlier than we have.
I just want to add just quickly, a longer time horizon, we also need to be talking about, I was doing some research on federal funding that's going to come because of the designated areas. So CDBG, disaster recovery dollars, will flow in probably 2 years from now. But from my just overview, Fort Myers got 1.1 billion in CDBG DR dollars for infrastructure, for housing, for all. It's not going to help these immediate issues, but longer term, we need to be planning as a community, where those dollars need to be directed and all that kind of stuff. That's a longer term, but we will have disaster recovery dollars flowing, not FEMA, but CDBG DR that will go for housing and infrastructure and those related kind of more sticks and bricks type projects.
That's good to know, and we need to be on top of it. Thank you, Sean. That's a ray of hope.
Yeah, it is.
All right. I'm going to cover the CoC Board of Directors election procedure and renewal. You have a handout. So this is the election date is December 10th, the CoC membership meeting. And we've got people need to be a member, have joined or renewed their membership in the CoC between January 1st and November 26th of this year. See, that's where I may vote during the December 10th election.
CoC membership is in December.
Okay.
That's a membership.
Oh, and then our board seat elections are in January. So you see those at the bottom of the handout. We have 2 open seats for non-entitlement communities. They're listed. 1 open seat for housing authority. It would be good to have a Clearwater housing authority. Yes, go ahead.
I just want to note that Mr. Neil Brickfield did say that,
It is Brickfield.
I wrote Brickman, but definitely it is Brickfield. I apologize. I know he's not listening, but I apologize anyway. Mr. Neil Brickfield did say that he is planning on having a representative on the CoC board, or applying to have a representative on the CoC board from the Pinellas County Housing Authority again. So I did want everybody to know that. Ms. Elise Minkoff is the Funders Council Chair, so she cannot serve in that seat. But the attorney, Charlie Curtis, did confirm that as Ms. Minkoff serves in an appointed position, and Mr. Brickfield's seat is an elected position, it is okay that they are from the same organization. So that is the case. I also wanted to acknowledge that Mr. King, thank you very much for your service. It says here that Sean is eligible for re-election. That was a staff error as Sean went from chair to at large. But Sean has served several years and does have to term off for at least 1 year.
So we'll be looking for an at-large member to step up for that seat. All right, any questions on those? And we will hold that election then, in a hybrid format, correct? People will vote verbally. Okay. Is there any, I'm not reading. Is there a question there for Carrie? Oh,
She's just talking about the funding.
Okay. All right, good. Success stories. Anyone want to share a success story as we wind down? I have one from, I'm reaching out to faith-based organizations, and there's this little church in Dunedin. It's a Catholic, I forget it is, Father Bob Swick is the minister, and he is also a Purple Heart veteran. And he has a member of the recovery epicenters that goes there and works and goes to that church. And so I met with Andrew, and Andrew was concerned, they've been inundated with calls that are people in recovery that are struggling with trauma and are, especially vulnerable. So he gave me the names of 4 different families that had been displaced and reached out to them and needed help. So I put something out on Facebook, and my cousin in Idaho kind of adopted this family and supported them. Another woman who lives down the street from me did another family, and they needed money for insulin. She had to go pick up insulin prescription and needles and all that stuff just to keep, their medical needs met. And, I did another family that was originally from our area, but was doubling up somewhere over in Pasco, and groceries and hygiene toiletries got driven over there. So there is this, network of people. If you talk to people, do you know family, or if you want to help in some way, you can do that. The Community Foundation of Tampa Bay or Pinellas, or all those are good directly to any of you providers to donate. But there are people in great need that that you just can't even imagine.
Kathleen, sorry, Rupp, but that just brings up a great point of people are like 100 times more likely to donate money when they attach a name, an age, a family, like the angel tree at Christmas time. Right. Those things get snapped up, right? So some organizations, you come up with ages, names, they need $5,000. I think the giving goes up manyfold. I don't know what organization does that, but I think what your story just dinged on my head and said, that's the way it works. I'm not giving to a black box. I'm giving to a family.
I had the same thought. I was going to lift my hand up, but you beat me out to it. Is there a website where you can sponsor a family or anything?
Somebody.
That's a great idea.
I don't know, because that was the feedback I got from this cousin who, quite honestly, I don't even communicate with Susan that much. I mean, she's out there, but she's like, hey, Kathleen, I like to donate, but I like to donate to a specific family. And that's what she did with Amazon groceries and
that's what we did with these 36 families that I'm talking about. Another generous donor, for example, after Helene, reached out to say, what do you need? And I said, well, we need, it was food at the time, it was gift cards and to grocery stores. And as you know, most of our funding sources don't allow. We're not shifting to be emergency responsive. We're trying to put everything through the systems that exist right now, and they're not flexible enough. They're not trauma informed enough, quite frankly, because we are excluding staff. I'm just telling you. In any case, this donor gave $15,000, and it was spent on $150 gift cards to the grocery store of the family's choice. And we got those out very, very quickly. The $100,000 was, literally the donor. I was like, can you call them individually and see and give to them? And they did. They literally contacted every single one of the families and gave directly to the family, because they had a conversation. The conversation wasn't.
They know the money's going where.
Right where it's going, and
there's trust of you and your
there's trust of us, right?
Yeah.
And so
I do know that the Red Cross has been at Light of Christ Church in Clearwater to set up, especially to respond to the families at the standard apartments. Part of the frustration that's been reported to me with the Hispanic Outreach Council that's helping with language barriers and stuff. There were a lot of Hispanic people at that. Is that they're afraid to take care of those services. And so people have not streamed into the Red Cross location there at Light of Christ Church, and they're going to pull back. And, from my limited knowledge, it seems like we've got to give it a chance to have success and word of mouth to spread to people that are hesitant to trust, so that they will hear that my friend got help, and they weren't asked about documentation or anything. So anyway, it's frustrating. It's so nuanced. I appreciate all the work y'all are doing. Any other positive, real good success stories you want to share? Okay. Well, thank you all. Yeah.
I think that the working through the trusted organizations is really important, and the flexibility, to your point, April, to be able to pivot and meet the actual needs and think less about the barriers. But I think the other piece is when we're working through these organizations and making direct connections, that's good for the donor. And it's important because it pulls more resources in, but we need to be especially attentive to who doesn't have access to those donor networks, and how those challenges sometimes exacerbate the disparities that are the continuing disaster that's always below the acute disaster that we're facing now.
Yeah.
Because the person that's most able to connect with the donor is not necessarily the person who's already walking into this disaster with the whole backpack of generational loss.
I want to let everybody know, the Department of Epidemiology this week shipped like a 2,500 soft packets of body wipes and 2,500 reusable water bottles. They are for the CoC, and they are currently at Pinellas County's warehouse, which I believe is in Clearwater. I'm going to send out an email to everybody so that all providers have an opportunity to claim some of those. But if anybody here would like to talk to me about it, I just wanted everybody to have that information.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to say thank you, Victoria, Megan, and your whole staff for helping us through this transition process and, meeting these huge challenges. And Mick, thank you for being part of it, part of the organization, the transition as we go forward. And the executive committee is going to give feedback on what we're looking for in the next HLA CEO, what would be a good fit. If anybody wants to communicate feedback to me or any other people on the executive committee, feel free. And take a cookie with you, the bar cookie with you if you'd like. And thank you for all the work you do. I really appreciate it. And this meeting is adjourned. Oops.